Good evening. Welcome to the July 3rd special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to sit with the craft group and try and work through some difficult situations we've had to try and get the proper insurance in place to hold events at the stadium. And tonight, that's the only issue at hand. There is no citizens' input. There will be no open mic, I should say. John, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Jim, would you and Dan want to come up to the table? And John, we'll get you another chair. Just slide right up.
There's another one.
in Murphy's.
I get the names confused.
And we'll start on the left, Dick. For the record, I think Diane's already on it, but...
I am Dick Kellerman, Town Council.
Dan Murphy with the Craft Group.
Jim Covery with the Craft Group.
John Davis, Pierce Davis, and Peritano.
Okay, great. Thanks for coming. Dick, do you want to start tonight,
I
or...
want to just bring up today, thank you all for coming here tonight.
Turn that mic to you, please. This is actually, I didn't expect cable to be here tonight, because they said they couldn't be, but they did show up, so I would like everybody at home to be able to hear.
We, as of the moment, have not been able to solve the insurance provision contained in the board's vote regarding the soccer event for Saturday. We got very close, and I thought we had actually solved it this afternoon in a conference call between Jim Covery, John Davis, myself, Joe Callahan from MIIA, and Mike Norick, who's the insurance advisor to NPS. We did solve the general liability issue in terms of reaching at least an agreement of mine as to the way that should be phrased on the certificate of insurance. But we were not able to solve the issue regarding civil rights coverage, and John Davis might be able to explain that better to you than I. But that remains, as of the moment, unsolved. Attorney Covery can tell you what efforts they're continuing to make with regard to that issue, and it may still be solved. I don't know. But as of the moment, it's not solved. I have asked, alternatively, that we be indemnified for exposure on the deductible above a number that your board's willing to set. That does not seem to be forthcoming. So that's where we are. Later on, when you get to the point of what the board's going to decide, I have drafted two forms of motions. One, because there is still the possibility of insurance resolution without having to require the board to come back, that you authorize the town manager to conclude that whatever may happen Friday is satisfactory. I've talked to Bob about this. He would not do so absent the advice of MIIA, myself, John Davis. It might happen. Alternatively, we may get the form of indemnification that I can represent to the town manager as adequate to protect the town's interest, honoring the board's clear direction to me that we not be exposed for a deductible above $50,000. But we may be able to close that gap through an indemnification provision. That hasn't happened. But rather than close off these possibilities tonight, I've drafted alternate motions.
Dick, do you want to elaborate on the $50,000 deductible? You're talking per
Yeah.
event or per case?
No, well, I mean, the reason that we're all here is that the Maya policy has imposed upon the town a $50,000 per claim deductible for law enforcement liability. Your board has said that could lead to an exposure of $50,000 times an unknown number of plaintiffs in a civil rights case. There could be 100 plaintiffs, there could be 1,000. That's an exposure, and no one's disagreeing with the board about that's an exposure that the town you simply cannot accept. We've been trying to convince Maya to put that back to $7,500. They're willing to do so if they are convinced that the coverage that the stadium has is adequate. They're not yet. So what I'm talking about is if there's an indemnification, it will cap the town's deductible exposure at a number, whatever the board directs. I've left it blank. It could be 50,000, could be more, for any event that occurs at, well, no, strike that. It's for this one event coming up on Saturday. We all believe that we're dealing only with Saturday, because after that we'll have another week to try to finish the work we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 days. We may be back in the same place, I don't know, but we're just talking about Saturday. So I've asked for indemnification, capping our exposure for that event for a deductible to a number that the board directs me to use. And that, if I get that, I could go to Bob and say, all right, our exposure for the deductible won't exceed X, and that's okay with the board, because you will have told me. So I don't know if that, Mark, explains to you that that's where we are.
Is the board satisfied with that explanation? John, did you want to elaborate on the...
Sure, I won't repeat everything that brought us here, but as you know, the licenses have been issued on 2 conditions: a beefed-up indemnification provision and enhanced insurance coverage. The first condition has been satisfied by the negotiations of the language that has been agreed to. The second one has not. And the second one, in looking at it more closely, it appears that the Kraft position, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, is that they have civil rights coverage. And I think, in speaking with their insurance representative today, it's through sort of non-traditional means. That's my word, not his. But they don't have a professional liability security policy or professional law enforcement policy or the equivalent thereof for a private entity. What they have is a GL, general liability insurance, but there is no law enforcement exclusion in that general liability insurance. So the effect is that the coverage in that general liability policy, and they're fairly standard. It protects an insured against claims for bodily injury and property damage, and it also protects an insured for claims for personal and advertising injury. Now, in the Maya law enforcement policy, there's matching language. There is bodily injury and property damage coverage, and there is also personal injury coverage. And my concern, as expressed today in the communications with Mr. Novak and Norick, and I sent to him a copy of the policy, the Maya policy, is that the personal injury definition under your current law enforcement policy is broader, and I think considerably broader than the personal injury definition, personal and advertising injury definition in the GL policy that the Crafts have provided. What that means is I think that the coverage for civil rights type claims is broader in the Maya law enforcement policy than it is under the Great Divide GL policy. Admittedly, I think the Great Divide GL policy provides some civil rights coverage. For example, I think we're talking about a pending case. I think there should be protection for that one. But, and I don't want to get into that case, but it doesn't provide as much civil rights coverage as the Maya law enforcement policy. We talked about trying to beef it up, and I think that's the discussions we've had today. Can they beef that protection up to get it close or closer, if not as close as the Maya policy, to provide as much civil rights protection? That we couldn't resolve today, and that's where we stand. That's why going into the new year, July 1, the coverage that is in place, to which the town has added as an additional insured for 2003-2004, is the same coverage that was in place for the town of Foxborough as an additional insured for 2012-2013.
Except for
So it's no greater than it was last season.
the deductible.
Except, well, that I'm talking about the Great Divide policy.
Okay.
And the deductible, of course, under the Maya policy, as effective July 1, is now $50,000 per claim or per person.
Any questions from the board for John?
Go ahead.
So when we hear that this has been solved for liability, I was thinking that that somehow applied to the $50,000 deductible general liability. Is that not correct?
I'm not.
Dick, you had said that.
The $50,000 deductible would still be imposed upon the town until the civil rights portion of the liability is resolved. So, does that answer your question?
But Dick, do you also negotiate a stop-loss provision of some number?
Can't get it. With who? With Maya? We haven't been able to accomplish that. I mean,
But were they amenable to that topic?
No.
No.
We talked to them about a deductible aggregate comparable to your limits aggregate.
Right.
And they were not willing to do that.
And John, just a point of clarification, the $50,000 is just for stadium events only. The other,
That's my understanding.
yeah, that is the case.
Right.
That's what Callahan told me, yes.
Any other questions? Jenny, Jim?
No, not this time.
Jim? Something to add? You need to slide that mic down, sorry. Sure.
Probably the best thing for me to suggest is, for most of this week, since we last met last Thursday, Mike Norick, who's our insurance consultant, Dick Gellerman, Cindy, John, Dan, and I have been working incredibly hard to try to find a way to resolve the insurance issue. And just so you know, I mean, Chief O'Leary worked over the weekend. Bob Cutler worked incredibly hard to get an application so that we could go to the market as quickly as possible. And it was it was well done. It was hard work. They deserve a lot of credit for that. Our consultant went to the market on Monday of this week. We were surprised to find out that someone had gone to the market in May on behalf of the town of Foxborough. I don't know to this day who that person was, but they went to the market on your behalf in May, and coverage was declined for you during that period of time. We are told that coverage was declined because of the potential of the Wellner-Dutton case, but we were surprised, and so we were expecting to go into the market and basically have a relatively clean slate that we would be able to canvass the market and find opportunities. Instead, what we found repeatedly was that insurance companies had been contacted and coverage had been declined. So we were surprised to learn that we were effectively starting a little bit behind what we anticipated where we would be. Nonetheless, we worked together, and we were able to get to the point earlier today where Mia articulated to us that they were willing to restore your deductible for all occurrences, including Gillette Stadium, back to $7,500 if we could provide them with an insurance certificate from our insurer that clearly stated that the town had insurance coverage under our policy for vicarious liability arising during events at Gillette Stadium. I'm very much paraphrasing, but we, as Dick said, I think I have agreement in principle about what that language should say. I am working with Mike right now to get our insurer to approve that final language. Given the holiday, everyone left a little bit earlier today. That, to a certain degree, it's understandable. We're certainly hoping that they will be back on Friday and we'll be able to button up that. I was surprised during that phone call this afternoon to find out that there were shortcomings in the civil rights coverage that were an impediment to MIA lowering their deductible. John just mentioned what the shortcomings are. I mean, I will say the following, that I am by no means an insurance lawyer. I'm by no means a civil rights lawyer. I read our license conditions, and they say that we will have so-called civil rights coverage. We have so-called civil rights coverage. We've had it for a long time. We've been providing the same coverage to you for a long time. John tells me that there is a shortcoming between what we are insured for and what MIA insures your police officers and police department for. To a certain degree, I'm not surprised by that because you're in the business of policing and we're not in the business of policing. Nonetheless, I don't know enough to know if there is a gap, and if so, where exactly that gap is, simply because I'm not experienced in this area at all. But I've already started the process with Mike Norick of trying to understand where that gap may be and what we may be able to do to address that gap. And I am sincerely hopeful that we will be able to close that gap on Friday. And I'm also very sincerely hopeful that that will be the last obstacle to getting the deductible restored. And I am further sincerely hopeful that it will be the case that this issue will be put to bed, not just for Saturday, but for the balance of the year, and hopefully forever, to be honest with you. So we're all working hard. We're not all the way there yet. We have one small issue to tie up. We have one larger issue to understand and to tie up. We're going to take tomorrow off and enjoy the day, and then we're going to come right back at it on Friday. I want to switch topics a little bit and let you know that...
Before you do, does anybody have any questions from the board to Jim on that subject?
Just so I understand it, Maya has agreed that if your civil rights insurance is comparable to what we already have under Maya, they will lower the deductible to $7,500 and basically make us the way we were before June 30th.
Yeah, I
Do I have that right?
That's my understanding.
Okay, and that
it's
you're
comparable, and they're satisfied that it's comparable.
right, and then you're working to reinforce your policy to match ours. Do I have that right?
Well, I will tell you this, John, that I'm, first of all, working to understand what the gap is, and that's more of the fact that John knows this area a heck of a lot better than I do. So, number one, I need to understand what we may be missing.
That's what it's all focused down to.
Yes.
The recognition that there's a gap in that coverage, and that's what you're collectively working on.
Well, I really do want to be as upfront as possible. I don't know that there is a gap, to be perfectly honest. John tells me there is. He certainly knows more than I do about this topic, but I have to get comfortable with the idea that there may be a gap. If there is a gap, and if we're required to fill that gap, then we're planning on spending some time on Friday trying to fill that gap. That's the very honest, forthright answer.
Okay. Wayne? Questions? Jenny? Jim? Okay, move on to your next point.
The next point is Saturday is a Revolution soccer game. We have lots of people who are planning on coming. At this point, given the holiday tomorrow and given how many people are planning on coming, it will be exceedingly difficult to communicate to all of them the possibility that the game could be canceled. And so that's something I'd like to ask this board to consider when you do whatever, when you vote on whatever motion you're going to vote on today. There are a lot of people who are really focused on coming on Saturday and eager to do so, and to get the word out without having some type of chaos is going to be a bit of a challenge for us. And it'll also be the case that if events are canceled, it will have a damaging effect on our ability to host more events in the future. And that will have an effect, of course, on the town of Foxborough, because you do derive such economic benefit from our ticket fees. So if there's a way to properly balance your concerns with our mutual interest in having a successful event business, I'd ask you to please do that. If there's any doubt whatsoever about our sincerity, I would hope that our actions over the past 5 days in particular would set those at ease. I don't know that I've worked harder, or that any of the people on this side of the table have worked harder on any topic at any time in the not too distant past. So it's not through a lack of effort that we sit here today, not having completed the agenda, but it just really is a very, very challenging task. So there is a consequence. We are also hearing, just so you know, we're hearing from Major League Soccer. They are aware of the possibility, and they're really not very happy about it, and are jumping up and down a little bit about that, and we're trying to keep them under control. We're also hearing from lots and lots of children about the Taylor Swift concert at the end of children. We're hearing from parents, to be perfectly frank, who tell us that their children are getting a little worked up about the possibility of Taylor Swift being canceled at the end of the month. So there are a lot of folks who are going to be impacted by your decision. And I just think you should be aware of that. Thank you.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that everybody's trying to work together to come to a conclusion on this, and everybody on this side of the table has been working really hard on it too. And it's just has to be stated. We're all trying to come to an agreement here to make this move forward. So do you have something in mind to suggest to this board that would make this move forward?
Well, I'd like to say a couple of things, if you don't mind. And number one, you're in this situation not because of any action that anyone here did. It's really the case where your insurance company, relatively late in the game, made a very substantial change to your deductible. And I can certainly understand your concerns. I really can. I mean, I've never been elected to office. I've never sat in your seats. I can certainly understand risk, though, and understand that if you're looking at, 3 weeks ago, you're looking at $7,500 per person of potential risk, and now you're looking at $50,000 per person of potential risk. That's an order of magnitude that is really pretty significant. So I appreciate, the choices that you're facing. I hope you can appreciate the choices that we're facing as well, and they are of a similar magnitude, but in a different way. We're really looking not just at the potential cancellation of a soccer game, but also a very significant disruption to our relationship, and also the relationship that we have with all of the various fans that buy tickets to all of our different events. So on each side of the table, there really is a significant potential risk, and I hope that we can work together to resolve it. I was very, very hopeful that we would be able to resolve it by insurance, either buttressing the MIA policy or finding an alternative policy. We haven't given up on that, but I will tell you that so far we're striking out. And so we could have this day on Friday that results in the MIA policy being changed, and if that works, that will be fantastic, and that solves the issue. In the event that doesn't work, though, there is no other insurance possibility that is currently available to us. We've exhausted every other one. I could bore you by telling you all the different options. I don't want to do that. It's right before the 4th of July. But I will tell you, insurance is coming down to that one potential. In addition to insurance, my understanding of the issue, and I'll happily listen to anyone, but my understanding of the issue is basically the following. You, as the licensing authority, have decided that there's a need for a police presence at these events to maintain order, public health, safety, etc. Understood, no doubt about it. You have a bylaw that says that has to be fulfilled by the Town of Foxborough Police Department. Understood. I think because of your insurance issue that you are reluctant or unable to actually fulfill the police detail because there's too much uninsured risk. I think, and I leave it up to the other folks around the table, I think that gives you an option, in essence, to explore other ways to address the issue. And other ways are working together with us. We have a great relationship with Chief O'Leary. Perhaps there's some way that we could work where you have a police presence, but it's in a reduced capacity for an event like the Revolution, and for each police officer or each unit of police work, there's a risk associated with it. Not that it's significant in my opinion, but there's a risk associated with it. To the extent that you can minimize the number of police units of work at one of these events, particularly something like the Revolution, I think we minimize the potential risk for all of us. And if you can give a little, we probably can give a little as well. I don't know exactly what that translates into, but if there's a willingness by this board to have your folks work with us, as you've worked with us on the insurance issue, we may be able to avoid what I would consider to be a catastrophe if it comes about. So I don't have any concrete proposals. I don't want to step on any toes by any stretch of the imagination, but I will explain that we're interested in working together. We value the relationship. We hope you value your relationship with us, and we hope you can think outside the box for what is a very unusual and terrible circumstance that you find yourself in and we find ourselves in. And with that, I'll stop.
Questions?
I'm going to go back to the civil rights policy. If that can be resolved by Friday, close of business, and MIA is satisfied, and they can say, all right, with that policy in place, if you can get it in place, they would reduce the deductible back to where it was before and basically bring our exposure back to the level that it was before.
That's correct.
Okay.
May I interrupt for 1 second, John?
Is there more to it than that?
Yeah, well, I want you to understand that we buy our policy for the craft group as a whole. And this is going to be a very basic statement here, but essentially what we're looking at right now is taking out a part of our general liability policy, the civil rights part of our general liability policy, taking it out and plugging in a law enforcement style civil rights policy. If all we did were to operate Gillette Stadium, that would be a little bit of a challenge. But given the fact that that policy covers all of our companies, it really is a fairly complicated challenge. And that's part of what Mike Norick and I have been talking about this afternoon. It's a little bit of a surgery.
I know that doing it that way would be surgery, but can a rider be drafted that can just be plugged in? Temporary as it may seem.
No, and believe me, you and I are on the same page. I asked exactly that question, and we're exploring all of those things. You have to sort out the potential conflicts between an overriding rider and the base policy, and making sure that it only has application where you want it to have application, and it does not bleed over into other parts of our business. So I just want to let you know it's not as simple as you may think, or Mike Norick has educated me that it's not as simple as I originally thought it was going to be, and we're going to work on it. We hope we get there.
Is it achievable by Friday?
We're going to work on it as hard as it can be, John.
So it's unknown.
At this point, I can't even tell you. And the complicating factor of July 5th being a Friday right before a long, hopefully beautiful weekend is just another thing that's conspiring against us.
All set, John?
All set.
Lorraine?
So the rider, is that specifically for stadium-associated events, insured, like events, not soccer games, meaning, actions
I think
against the policy?
If that's possible, if I may, I think that one thing that my sense that Mike was going to explore was the ability to get some sort of a law enforcement endorsement or a security patrol / professional endorsement to the GL policy that they have, which would beef it up sufficiently to satisfy Maya so that they would then reduce your deductible. Whether that's doable by Friday, complicated by the holidays and the short, the very narrow window we have, is I don't know. I haven't placed insurance, but my understanding is that's one of the options that they are going to explore.
I can tell you that we actually have looked into the security and I always get it wrong, John, but it's security professional liability.
Right.
Okay. We looked into that policy. Because we've never had that line of coverage before, it's probably going to take us 3 to 4 weeks to actually move down that path. We are going to move down that path, but we won't have it done on Friday. So on Friday, we're going to look to do this surgical augmentation of what we have currently and what we may have as a gap. So it's going to be, a pretty sophisticated little project that we're going to do on Friday, and hopefully we'll get it done.
So, assuming that gets done, then that same augmentation would apply to the next 2 or 3 events that are happening within the next 3 or 4 week period. Is that correct?
I am hopeful that will apply for the balance of the policy year. I'm very hopeful of that. One thing I've learned over the past few days, though, it's really difficult to plan on anything. There are so many different variables that get impacted. So at a minimum, we'll be trying to put something in place that'll cover Saturday. Hopefully it'll cover the following Saturday as well. But our goal would be to solve it once and for all. So,
John, are there any other possibilities that you can think of that could help the situation?
Other than what they're exploring, no. I mean, I think that I don't think anything has been rolled out.
Mm-hmm.
But whether it's an endorsement to an existing policy, a standalone policy, which is what Maya keeps talking about, that they would like to see, and Mike Norick was not. He seemed to be troubled by a standalone policy for a non-governmental entity. So I sent it to him for his review, the law enforcement policy that Maya has. But of course, that's crafted for governmental entities. If we can find one that is more designed for non-governmental entities, but still would lend the town the protection we need when we are added as an additional insured to the policy, that might be ideal. So I guess I can't tell you exactly what's possible. I don't think anything has been rolled out, but the time frame is tough.
And in terms of other NFL stadiums, this is not an issue?
Not to this, no. The short answer is no, I'm sorry. It's not. Yeah. No, I've actually talked to other folks that are in similar capacities to mine, and the short answer is, in many cases, it's, they're owned by some governmental entity.
The stadium itself.
Yeah, I haven't come across anyone who has a similar situation as ours, and so that's part of the complicating factor. Actually, is we're in unknown territory, not just here in Massachusetts, but our insurance brokers in New York City, and you would think they would have some type of broader experience to draw upon, but we're working in an unknown area right now. But just to reiterate a couple of things here. We're trying. We really are trying. I would love to tell you that I really, honestly, and truly believe this will all get resolved on Friday. I simply don't know. I really don't know if it's going to get resolved or not. And one of the reasons why I'm here is to ask this board if you could propose something to do to avert a catastrophe. If there's something that you could do that would work for you and work for us, and not scare away customers, but also make sure you're protected, make sure we're protected. Love to hear it. Love to talk about it. It would be truly wonderful.
John?
Going down that road, assuming that this civil rights coverage is not placed on Friday, and I know, Dick, I don't know if you've got these scenarios worked out, but what scenarios exist where the town would not be subject to this $50,000 exposure? Which is the root of this matter, and in what scenarios exist that could mitigate that exposure?
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Briefly, and if I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to request like a 10-minute intermission, and I know we're all anxious to get out of here, but it's been a moving target. I was on the phone with Maya all the way down here. I'd like to see if they have any development that I can report that might be helpful to this board to make a decision.
So you need to make a phone call?
I need to make a phone call. I've been buzzing.
We can continue on the other end of this while you do that, John?
Sure.
All right.
If you want to keep chatting, let me make a phone call.
And we'll move on to what other scenario that we're looking at. Okay?
I'll be back in about 10.
Yep. Thank you. So, I think, John, what we...
But you must have gone down the road saying, that if in the event that insurance isn't placed on Friday,
Well, the good news is...
what scenarios do we have to consider that could still resolve the exposure question
Yes.
and allow the event to go forward?
There is good news, and the good news is that we do have two policies in place right now. And when I say we, I mean we collectively. You have your MIA policy, and that does give you some protection, and we have our general liability policy that also gives us some protection. We have a little bit more flexibility, I think, on our policy than you may have on your policy. So, with that having been said, there's no way to absolutely positively eliminate the $50,000 deductible issue. It's a fact of life. We've wrecked our brains to try to figure out how to do it, and I can't figure out any way to eliminate it. So all we can hope to do is minimize it. And the way to minimize it is to try our very best to come up with the best policing plan that is, I hate to say it, but as minimally risky as possible. And so that way, the deductible is still whatever it's going to be, but let's try to minimize as much as possible the potential for that deductible to actually come into play. And we've talked about a variety of different ways to do it. It may be best if you don't mind to actually have someone Dick probably knows a little bit more about this than I do, simply because I don't know a great deal about how the town operates. But there are ways to recognize that the Revolution game is a traditionally relatively mild policing game, and to police at a lower level, if that makes sense, so that we don't have as great a liability. There may be ways to take some of the risk onto our general liability policy, and we've talked about a few of those as well. If you have some flexibility, and if you're able to talk with Attorney Gellerman and Chief O'Leary, that might be a good idea.
If let's cut to it. Okay, to answer your question directly, John, the liability, the exposure for the deductible cost arises from the operation of our law enforcement people at the stadium. That's the problem. Now, you can minimize that risk in several ways other than the insurance that we've been talking about. One is to, as Jim said, lower the number of police officers who are under the chief's, Foxborough police officers, who are under the chief's direct control. That lowers the risk and therefore lowers the potential for exposure. That's one way to do it. You can also, on the assumption that alcohol leads to bad acts and leads to problems, you can, with the consent of the stadium for this event, don't sell alcohol, stop it. And this is the part that my friend Jim doesn't want to hear. We can spread the risk of the exposure. There's exposure of 50,000, 100,000, 150. I don't know what the number is, but if we lower, following up on Jim said, if we lower the risk by lowering the number of Foxborough police officers under the direct control of the chief, which isn't to say that that those officers won't be at the stadium, they will be, but maybe fewer of them can be under the chief's technical control and some of them under Mr. Briggs' control. That lowers the risk. We get away with the alcohol. That lowers the risk. Maybe in those circumstances, we can reach an agreement with the stadium that they will take the first X dollar risk and they take the rest, and we cap up to a certain amount. That really all those together minimizes the risk to the town for this one event. So, but to me, it's a combination of, it doesn't have to be a combination. I would prefer that, Jim would just say, yeah, we'll cap your deductible at X. You're not going to do that. But if these other conditions were in place, maybe they'd be willing to consider a cap, or, maybe we pay the first amount, they'd pay the next amount, and then we'd agree to fight about the third amount when and if it happens.
Can I just ask a question? Because, Jim, and this goes to you. You've stated to us that you believe you have a policy in place that will cover. The town has their policy. And if you think the risk is low, and I know Mark has already raised this with you, but if the risk is that low, why doesn't the stadium step up and put a limit to our risk? Even if you capped our risk at $50,000 total, and the organization picks up the rest of it. I mean, is that not an option?
If that became, just to pick up on that, you cap our risk at $50,000 deductible, and you would take the risk of any more deductibles on top of that. I already know your answer. But the thing being is trying to work collaboratively here.
Yes.
It's not just an issue of insurance, it's an issue about money. Nobody wants to take the hit. So I don't think, you have obviously already stated here tonight, you don't think it's a high-risk situation. You eliminate the serving of alcohol at the event. It lowers the risk even more. We all know that. And then you cap our deductible at $50,000, and anything after that, you have to reimburse the town for if there's more than one action. And I think that's a pretty good compromise to get through this Saturday.
And I think the best way to think about this is we would not have control over the risk. And so my experience is that if you have control over the risk, you can take measures to mitigate the risk, and therefore you can take the risk. But when you don't have control over the risk, it really is not a good business decision to go ahead and take the risk on anyway. So here, what we're saying, and I haven't really been very clear about it, and I apologize for that, but because we don't have any ability to control the conduct of your officers, not saying that they would do anything intentionally by any stretch of the imagination, but we just would not have any control over them, yet we'd still be the people who ultimately would be on the hook for whatever actions were to occur by them. And that's a mismatch between control and risk that we generally don't like to do. What we're talking about here is recognizing your concerns and recognizing hopefully our concerns. I think that we can probably get to the point where we have the proper number of police officers on site, have some of them under our control and therefore covered by our insurance, and have others of them under Chief O'Leary's control and under your insurance. And then we work out some arrangement, as Dick suggested, where we basically have tiering of the deductible, tiering, T-I-E-R, where you would take the first slice, we take the second slice perhaps, and then the third slice we just, figure out what to do with later. But those are the types of creative things I'm hoping we can do that could, be a little bit painful for all of us, but not horribly painful for any one of us.
Jim, anything to say?
Yeah, a couple things, and I thank you for your candor and a non-adversarial approach over the last week or so. And hopefully we can get to where we get to on Saturday. I don't think we're going to obviously get it done today, but certainly could entertain a motion to extend it to Friday or an hour before the game, predicated on Dick and Bob Cutler reviewing our requirements to make sure they're met. So, in other words, if it's not done today, extend it to the end of the business day on Friday. Give them the opportunity to work Friday, and I'll be blunt, Thursday also. I mean, these guys are getting paid, not you guys, but the insurance people. Work Thursday and Friday to get it done because it's that important, that critical by the end of the day on Friday. So we're not stressed to trying to draw the line in the sand today.
Not to interrupt you, Jim, I didn't mean to, but John, do you have an update?
Yeah, let me just, I just got off the phone with Mike Cusack. Mike, as you know, is the Vice President of Claims at Maya, and I wrote down so I can understand, so I can describe
John,
this.
does he have more feathers than Callahan?
I'm sorry?
Is he, who's higher?
They're equals. He's Vice President of Claims. He said that Maya has a credit system for members in good standing, and Foxborough is a member in good standing. What Maya is willing to do is to accelerate and mature some credits for Foxborough early. And so what they would do is apply 42.5 to the first deductible for any claim that may arise out of the soccer events on this Saturday, July the 6th. So in effect, hold your deductible, your first deductible for any claims that may arise to $7,500, and they would take the 42.5 above that for the first claim.
So, John, thanks for that. Joe did mention that to me about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and I mentioned it to our finance director, and that's already been built into our budget, a certain amount of the claim money
Yep, okay.
for this fiscal year, so it really would still be coming out of our pocket as a town,
If there was a claim,
if there was a claim.
yeah. But that's only one.
Yeah, and that's the second
I don't know how
problem.
the credit system works for Maya, so... yeah.
Can I,
Hold on. Jim?
No, I'll hold it for now.
Okay.
actually, I want to, was that it, John?
That's it.
Okay. So I just want to go back to Jim's suggestion, which I think is a very sound one, but so that we understand our authority. We've had a dialogue just now where we talked about a combination of different factors that might result in a solution, and they are, to repeat them, we don't serve alcohol. The issue is the number of police, not the number of Foxborough police officers that are at the stadium. We're not talking about that. It's a question of whose operational control are they under. If we could do something about that, it sounds to me as though Jim and I could work out a tiering of the exposure on the deductible.
And it's
But
still-
I need, excuse me, but I can't, I don't know if the board wants to go that way. If you do, it's going to be Friday, and I need to get authority.
It's getting right back, no matter what situation you want to change or compromise on, that it's still down to the deductible, which puts the town at a great exposure. And no matter what, if you tier it, we pay the first 50, they pay the second 50, or go back and forth. It's still something I think is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. And I think that's the first thing we need to really address here. Is anybody on this board want to speak about that right now, about the deductible situation? I'll start with you, John.
Yeah, I'd asked
How do you
before if
feel?
there was a solution that would reduce our exposure of the 50,000. This reduces it partially. I don't know the mechanics of tiering, and I can imagine police officers under the chief's control and police officers under the stadium's control debating on what tier they were on.
No. Tiering means, the tiering means that our exposure is unknown, right? Because we don't know the number of claims that are going to come in. But so, if there is exposure liability for something that happens Saturday, tiering means the first $100,000 of deductible, we're at risk. The next $500,000, they're at risk. Anything above that, we'll fight about. That's what tiering is. It doesn't have...
Still,
It's
is a great exposure, I think.
Yeah,
to agree.
there is an exposure. Yes, Mark. My understanding is that we were comfortable, but willing. Look, if the insurance solution comes in, the board has to understand that our exposure is $50,000 per wrongful event. Is that the right language? I'm sorry.
Per claimant.
Per claimant. No. If the insurance comes in, we're going to be limited to $50,000 per wrongful event, not per claimant, if we have the insurance solution.
No, I believe that what Joe Callahan suggested today was
It's
reverting.
7,000, yeah. So there is exposure of 7,500 per claimant, so you're going to have exposure anyways,
Which is what it is.
That's what we have now.
which is what we have now.
Yes.
Okay. With the process that we're talking about is, you may haven't talked about it yet, but the exposure will be a different number, will be higher. You have to tell me what it is. So up to that number, we take the risk for this one event, right? Above that, they take the risk for this one event. After that, we'll fight about it.
If I may, my understanding of the typical Revolution police detail plan is that
Can we just stay on the discussion of whether or not the board wants to? I just want to end one subject. We raised three.
No, I'm sorry, but this gets to that point.
Okay.
If you give me 2 seconds, I
Yep.
promise I'll get there. The detail is 12 officers, and right now 12 officers gives you X amount of exposure. And right now your exposure is $50,000 per deductible, which you've concluded is unacceptable. What I'm suggesting, and we don't have anything that we can say this is the particular proposal, but if instead of having 12 officers reporting directly to Chief O'Leary, suppose you have 6 officers report to Chief O'Leary, and then we'll have 6 officers working with us. Same people that you would have, but they'll just be getting paid a little bit differently with us. And what happens is those 6 officers are under our insurance policy. They're not subject to your $50,000 per claim deductible. They're subject to our deductible requirement. So we will have reduced the potential risk by just hiving off 6 of them. Still the same bodies, still the chief who sets up the plan. It's just that we'll have some of them under our insurance policy and you'll have some under yours. And I don't know what the right mix is. I would be lying if I said I did. But that's step number 1. Step number 2 would then be no liquor in the stadium, because that seems like a sensible thing to do. Then step number 3 is that Dick and I and Bob, whoever else, we would figure out, okay, if there are any claims, the first number of those claims would be for your account. The next next dollar amount of those claims would be for our account. And if it goes above that, then there's some sharing that goes on. It'll take a little bit of work to figure out what the right numbers are, but the idea is that you'll have a little bit more certainty than you have even right now.
But to make a decision here tonight, which we have to do, we need to know what that exposure is. So if you're saying if it's 12 officers from Foxborough working at the stadium, the exposure is $600,000.
Could be multiple claimants.
Just depends on what happens.
I'm trying to get to some kind of a number, because that seems to be the thing we're lacking here, and we don't have a number. And I know you're trying to stay on the subject, but I think you're a little off. I want to ask every board member how they feel about the exposure. And I'm going to start with John again. Are you comfortable with the exposure of $50,000 per plaintiff? I guess you'd say.
The trouble is the amount of plaintiffs is unknown. And what I was looking for originally was a cap.
Right.
And this is trying to get to a cap, I guess, where it's saying that the town will be responsible for X. And, to say it's hard to predict what the outcome of an event might create. It could create 50 plaintiffs or 0. And to say, would we be willing to pick up the first 2 and make it $100,000? It's hard to say what an acceptable risk is. But if we were capped at that, I think that would be an interesting compromise, to say it will be no more than $100,000.
What's the revenue on a soccer game for the town, Bob? Randy, sorry, it should be Randy.
It varies, but it's depending upon the success of the season, maybe $300,000
Per game?
Oh no, that's for the whole
One
year.
game.
It's for the whole year.
The whole year.
One
To
game?
to us,
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously more for the.
No, but I'm just saying, what's the revenue to the town of Foxborough for one game and ticket? Dan, do you know?
300,000 divided by your average attendance.
25,000.
25,000, so where?
4 times that.
Where?
But
Okay.
one of the things
Well, hold on. I'm just going to go down the road here, because I just want to keep it a little bit in order. So you all set, John? You got something?
I'm all set, yeah, but thanks for that
All right.
number. That's
I'm not comfortable with an open-ended $50,000 liability to us. I think the discussion about tiering is interesting. do you want any comments about the staffing issue at this point?
No, not at this point. I want to see where, let's say, so your comfort level, wouldn't you be to hold the first deductible?
I'd want to hear tiering, like sharing,
Yeah.
is it 10, 10, 10, 10, 10?
But you're not
To end
comfortable
at
standing alone.
50, as far as we're concerned, which costs us 25.
I think
and
it's
therefore,
helpful to me to know what, as John addressed, what's the cap?
Right. Well, we're going to go down there. Right now, you're not even comfortable with the first deductible of 50,000. Is that what you're saying? Okay, Ginny?
No, I'm not comfortable for the 50,000. I'm not comfortable with the exposure for the town. I'm just not comfortable with it.
Thank you, James.
No, I think we're all in agreement that the fiduciary responsibility, I don't know how you can ignore it, because it's always the what if. What if something happens? And the soccer games are pretty benign, and been very lucky to date. Something can happen, and we're going to be sitting here on a Monday saying, I can't believe we did this, if something happens.
Holding our hands in our head.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
now
just-
we're going to go down the issue. I'm sorry, Jim. You
No, that's fine.
I'll start with you, Jim, coming the other way. I think it's a great idea not serving alcohol at the event. Do you agree? Jenny?
I
And
think
there's
that
no-
would be, I think that's a good suggestion.
So we're all, Lorraine?
Yeah, it
We're all-
helps reduce the risk.
So right now, you got 5 board members that are very, happy about that, I guess I'll just say, that you're proposing no alcohol at the event.
Susan, can I have a question?
Go ahead.
Do you allow, like tailgating in the parking area during soccer events?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so who's to say no one's going to bring in a six-pack and be sitting in their car? So there's alcohol right there. So whether we say no alcohol, you can not sell alcohol. But if you're allowing people to be in the parking lot, then alcohol is there.
Okay.
So
All right.
there's,
So we see where the board stands on that, on both sides of that issue. We still got an issue with the deductible and the liability, not the liability, the potential of the town facing a catastrophic, monetary situation
Well, if
which
I'm-
could happen.
If I could, your current policy is not capped, right? If we were sitting here 2 months ago, you wouldn't have a capped policy either. You'd have $7,500 per claimant times, we'll
But-
have 15,000 people there on
And
Saturday.
that's also something this board's going to need to address to our financial and our town manager stepping back. That doesn't apply right now to this situation because we do plan on addressing that, Jim.
Okay.
But right now,
I
we
want to
can't.
compare apples to apples, though, and so when you say you're not comfortable with uncapped exposure, you have uncapped exposure, right? You had uncapped exposure 2 weeks
Right.
ago. You have a greater magnitude of uncapped exposure, if that makes sense at all.
Right.
Right now. But the tiering concept is a cap. I mean, your concept, Lorraine, of 10, 10, 10, 10 could work, actually. I mean, I don't know what number is the right number. We'd have to really think about it. But that's what we're talking about is let's work together to give you some comfort and to give us some comfort as well. And that's why this package is designed to work together, is if you can allow us to have the right number of police officers, but some on your policy and some on our policy, that's helpful. If you will allow us to have the equivalent of a cap, but not a hard cap, a cap that's going to work in some type of tiering arrangement, that'll be helpful. And we'll do things. And I don't know what we can do in the parking lot, to be perfectly frank with you, but we have a couple of days, we'll think about it.
well, before we make a decision, before we make a decision on something, you're saying you'll think about it. I mean, if there's going to be alcohol in the parking lot, people are going to have exposure to alcohol.
With all
So-
due respect, though, I'm simply trying to help here. And if
I
you
know,
have
believe me.
suggestions, I'm really all ears.
Yeah,
I really
well,
am.
my suggestion is, yes, okay, you can ban sales of alcohol, but the reality is there is still going to be alcohol on a very hot day, on a weekend.
So don't people
In
get
parking
frisked
lot.
when they go into the stadium?
Well, yeah, I think you're concerned about the parking lot, right?
She's talking about
Right.
tailgating, Dick.
And-
While they're in the
Right.
parking lot, not at the...
I mean, the fact is, if word gets out, and it will, that there's no alcohol being
Pick up.
served, they're going to bring it, and they're going to bring it in the parking lot.
Well,
Let's binge it up, Dick.
To
It
to
is
be
what it
fair,
is,
no,
you know.
I'm sorry, but for soccer games, there's not that element to be very, very basic about it. It tends to be a relatively tame crowd. So there's not going to be a lot of binging that'll occur in the parking lot. But having said that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I could assure you there will not be alcohol consumed in the parking lot. That would, I'll work on it, and Dan and I will think about it, but at this moment, I can't assure you.
Which is another thing the board's going to need to start thinking about addressing in the future. Cindy, you've been patient.
I was just going to say, picking up on what Jim had said, in light of the fact that there are all these unresolved issues.
Use a mic.
There are all these unresolved issues that people seem to be genuinely working to try to resolve. I think the first thing the board needs to consider is whether they're going to do what Jim suggested, which is extend the deadline so that we can proceed to see if we can get anywhere before Saturday.
That's definitely number one. And anybody see any harm in doing that? Can I have the motion you wrote, please? We'll hand it to the clerk, Dick. Let the clerk.
I have two alternatives, one that talks to insurance and one that talks to indemnification, and one that talks to both. You want both?
One, we're talking about having the proper insurance in place for Friday's event. Do you have a motion for that?
I do.
That'd be the one I'd like the clerk to review.
Isn't that the one for
Option A, right?
Option A.
Can we go over all the options so we can understand
Well,
why
I'd like to
there
just
are
take
three of
one
them?
at a time so it doesn't get confusing, because this topic seems to get a little bit confusing when you start bringing all kinds of different
It just sounds like
into
there's
it.
one that
I
covers both of them.
I did one just for the, one for the insurance, and I did one for the insurance and the indemnification language.
So why would we need one versus the other?
If you're going to give us the opportunity to work on both aspects of what we're talking about, insurance, which it sounds like you're fine, and the indemnification issues that we're talking about, you would vote for both of them.
Are you talking about policing in the second motion?
Well, I didn't anticipate that, Mark, but I drafted it, that the indemnification would be a consequence of the policing decision.
So can we go back to the first motion and hand it to the clerk, saying if the proper insurance is just that one situation, if by Friday they have the proper insurance in place, that we can agree to license the event, then that's out of the way.
But the indemnification
The one from last
option
week?
is a backup plan
Same one, just changing the date.
civil
I
rights
think that's what
insurance.
this does.
Correct.
If the civil rights insurance is placed on Friday, the other issue is moot, and we go back to the way we police the stadium normally.
So you're saying if the civil rights issue is addressed on Friday, then Maya would come back, lower the deductible from 50 and go back to the 75, but that has to be in place first.
That's my understanding, yeah.
Right, that's
fine.
option A. I think that's the option that is, I think, most agreeable. If that fails, though, this other discussion is about a backup plan just for this event.
So we get one motion out, we vote on that.
Yep.
If you want to read that, review that, you can read it aloud, not as a motion, just read what the motion is. I mean, don't make it a motion at this point.
Okay. Just so you can all understand it, here's the motion, that the board, having been advised that the applicant has not yet been able to satisfy the insurance requirement condition voted by this board on or about March 15th, 2013, and subsequently confirmed on several occasions, but also being advised that said insurance solution remains a possibility, hereby votes that the town manager, in reliance upon such advice as he deems appropriate, may determine on the board's behalf that the applicant has provided to him in writing on or before 5:00 p.m., July 5th, 2013, that said applicant has obtained liability insurance, including civil rights coverage, insuring the applicant and the town for the soccer event scheduled for Saturday, July 6th, 2013, in a form satisfactory to this board.
And for that motion to work, that's assuming Bob Cutler is going to be here on Friday and Dick Ellerman and Cindy are going to be available to review stuff. Is that the case?
And John Davis.
And John Davis?
It is for me, yes.
We had already clarified this afternoon with Joe Callahan that he would make himself available. He has his laptop and phone with him. John will have his phone. I'm going to be running back and forth, but I'll be available via phone. And I'll be local, so I'll be able to come in here if I need to look at documents. So I will, make myself available for that.
One question, if we approve this motion and the insurance was placed on Friday, we would be in fact freeing up the license and allowing the event to proceed?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with that?
Well, my question is, if that doesn't happen,
Then that motion doesn't carry. It will carry, but if they don't,
right, so then what happens?
That's why we're talking about the second option.
Right, okay,
See,
so there's a
back
second.
on March,
Okay.
we granted the permit
Right,
license contingent upon this happening. So everything stays the same up until end of the business day on Friday. If this all comes together, there's no more motions to be made because it's already been
Right.
made back in March.
Correct. So this motion is just to authorize me to make the decision on your behalf, knowing that that is not going to be approved on my part unless I have John Davis's approval and also Maya's approval and Dick's approval. So without those three approvals, I'm not making that decision on your behalf, and then the prior motion stands.
I'm good with it.
good.
Okay. Rather than rereading it, I'll just make him, I move that we adopt the language as presented by Dick Gelman, as I just previously read, relative to the placement of civil rights insurance by the Kraft organization, and it's just for this one event on Saturday.
Second.
Any discussion? Should we make that motion one?
What do you mean, just for that?
Yeah,
It's
just for that
irregardless.
one.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, if it
Oh,
is
that's right,
placed.
it's in place,
If
yeah. You know, you should...
Because it
It's
says
acceptable.
for the soccer event scheduled for Saturday.
That's what it says.
Well, because it could be a temporary solution only for the day, and it
Yeah,
could be
it
a
could be a
long-term.
one-day, yeah.
So if this is saying you're going to give it to Friday to get something in place that everyone on the town.
Plus, there's a possibility this could be a one-day.
Correct.
Correct.
It's not very likely, to be honest. Either we're going to get the coverage.
But we'd
or we're
take
not
it,
gonna
wouldn't
get
we?
it.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? I might drive down and get it myself, Mark.
But I guess it's okay as written, because if it does extend beyond this, we can just accept it for the season.
Right.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. 5-0. We need to hand that motion, mark that motion one, please, and hand that to Diana. And do you have duplicates of that motion for the...
Yeah.
Because I think the press will be looking for one. He's always looking for one.
Yeah, okay.
And, all right, so that's all done and cleared up. Now, the next thing you want to go is you're talking about, I'm going to try and understand this. You're going to take our police officers in Foxborough, and they're going to report to who?
Not all of your police officers. What
Right,
we
well,
would,
some. I mean, it's obvious that there's some kind of an actual thought-out plan here. So if we're going to spit it out, I'd like to just get
no,
it
that's
out.
fine. I'll spit it out. My thought is, number one, understand what the chief's plan would be for Saturday, and then point number two would be to work with the chief to see what he would feel comfortable as far as taking some of those officers and having them work for us under the direction of whoever. Mark, I guess Mark will be there on Saturday, so Mark Briggs. But following the plan that the chief outlines for proper policing of the event on Saturday, and having the remainder of the officers continue to work for Chief O'Leary. So that would be the operational plan. Number one, it's the chief's plan. Number two, we would ask him, if possible, to devote some of the officers, or allow some of the officers to work for our group. That way they would be covered by our insurance and minimize the risk of the $50,000 deductible.
Bob, do you have anything to say about that?
I have some concerns about it just because I don't know how we're going to make that work. I'm not comfortable making a decision for all of you on that front. We would have to have another meeting, which we can't have by Friday because it's not been posted. So unless you come up with a working solution tonight, I don't know how we're going to address that. Also, we did have discussions about this during the week, and I just don't know that that is a legal workable option for us with our existing bylaw. So I would have to be convinced that that would be a possibility. If Dick wants to speak on that.
Hang on.
Before we get too far, Mark?
Go ahead.
I mean, we've got 5 selectmen here, and we're concerned about bylaws, and rightfully so. But we're going to make a decision on putting a half a dozen professional police officers under the control of somebody else, and we're going to make that decision. We have the chief. I mean, is anyone missing the big picture here? Today is Wednesday, and we're going to say everything that's been going on for 10, 20 years, we're going to disrupt it, and within a couple days, these guys go work for somebody else. It may be a brilliant idea, but I'm not in a position to say that's good or bad, because I don't know how the police work. I don't know what the protocol is, and I don't think anyone at this table does.
I'm not going to support it.
If I may.
Hang on, the chief is at the mic.
Could I request, because it is an emergency situation discussing security plans at the stadium, we take a brief recess, go into emergency
Executive session.
to discuss in specific a security plan.
I like your suggestion, Chief, but I don't see where it falls into an emergency plan, because this is not a natural catastrophe. This is not a public risk. I mean, Randy,
Well, we are talking about
town council?
We are talking about public risk.
I understand that, but it's not a natural emergency. It's not an earthquake. It's not a snowstorm. I'm trying to protect the board here, so I'm going to ask Dick.
Right.
Dick, do we have it? And you better be thorough on this, please. I don't want to be going to executive session and having ethics charges on Monday, because they're not open Friday.
Why don't we do this instead? Let's take a break, and the chief and the chairman and council can discuss the chief's concerns.
And Mr. Cutler?
Yes, of course. Didn't I say that? I meant to say that.
How's the board feel about that, or do you even want to go down this avenue? I mean, before we go down this avenue, how does the board feel about this? I mean,
I want to be clear. I'm not saying I'm for it or against it. I mean, I have feelings, but that's not what I'm stating. I think it's out of our realm to try to handle it at this table. And we've already said we've only got 12 officers in a stadium. I think that's even speaking more than we should be speaking,
Right.
because it's a security issue for a stadium. So I think it needs to get offline at this table and go to someplace where the chief can speak the discussion that a chief has to have. It's just not with this board.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not pro or against. I am, but that's not what I'm stating.
Hang on, I'm going to go down the line. Ginny?
Well, I think if there's going to be a change in the regular security plan, I think that...
No, I'm saying, that's not the question.
What?
My question is, do you even want to go down this road?
Well, I think the police chief should be consulted or give his input and let us know what he thinks about it.
There's been discussions about this week.
Well, I've not been privy to those.
No, because you're not the chairman. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But this is something that I have to go to do and have these discussions. And I'm just throwing it out there before we just get into a big... If I don't ask the question, we could get into a 2-hour discussion, and I come back and you already said no. So that's why I'm running down. It's kind of like a straw vote. Lorraine?
I don't believe that it's the correct procedure according to the town bylaw, but aside from that, the ultimate authority for public safety rests with the chief, and I would never support doing anything to change that. This is this is off limits as far as I'm concerned. We've had this discussion back in 2009. I don't want to go there again.
Okay. Thank you. John?
One question, and then I'll chime in on that. The reason for your suggestion is so that your insurance policy can be present.
Yes. To address a couple of questions here, the plan will be the chief's plan. We're not trying to in any way, shape, or form change the way the stadium is currently policed. All we're trying to do is utilize our insurance policy as much as possible to offload some of the risk onto our policy. But this is all, number one, starts with the chief. He should develop the plan. I don't know how many officers. I wouldn't even think to tell he can also then decide how many, if any, he would feel comfortable allowing to go onto our insurance policy, and begins and ends with Chief O'Leary. But yes, that's the goal.
Yeah, well, I think it's an unusual approach. I wouldn't mind hearing the results of that conversation.
Okay. So 3 want to hear it, 2 don't. So I'm going, I guess we're going to hear it. So let's
Take a
Recess for 5
Take
minutes.
about, we're going to give this 10 minutes, right? Is that enough time? Because people are going to be sitting at home, and I think they want to go to a parade or something.
Mark, is it, and I don't want to put the chief on the spot, but if he's going to go in and say, this is, no way this is going to happen, do we even need to do that?
Okay.
I mean, that way it's not going into executive session. Is it even worth going down that path?
Edward, do you want to have this discussion?
I want to have a discussion with you, Mr. Chairman, town manager, and town council.
Okay. Thank you, Jimmy.
I'd also ask that John, would you mind joining us? Sure.
Okay. Thank you and welcome back. Dick, the question was asked briefly if we could go in executive session about emergency planning, or whatever the word was actually used, strategic planning for security, and your answer is no, correct?
It's hard to answer those questions sitting here without the benefit of my research, but I thought the safest thing to do would not to do that. My understanding of an emergency is the roof fell in and you didn't expect it. So the cautious answer was, let's not do it in executive session. And to, with apologies to the rest of the board, to have a meeting not subject to the open meeting law.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so we just had a talk in, I guess I'll call it Bob's office at the moment, town council, myself, and Chief O'Leary. And Ed, would you like to address the board?
I will resolve the issue, and we'll take care of the operational plan.
Okay. Any questions for the chief? I don't think you're off the seat that easy.
Yes, ma'am.
Will you have direct control operationally over all the police officers?
Absolutely, and we'll take care of it.
Okay. And I don't think he wants to talk about that, like you had suggested, Jimmy, talking about strategy of law enforcement, amount of officers and locations of officers.
I think my point was for him not to talk about it.
Right. So I'm saying, so that he's assured me, town council, our offices, that they will be in place.
I have one more question.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
Ed, I have one more question. So will all of the officers at the stadium be reporting directly to you?
Yes, but I'll handle it so it's appropriately mitigating the potential risk.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Will the police officers that will be under the town's insurance be named, and will the police officers that will be under the stadium insurance be named before the event? So that...
Well, Jimmy, I have to hold you up. We weren't going to discuss the strategy of what officers, the amount of officers, where they're going to be, whose authority. The chief has stated that all the officers will be under his direct authority, and he will handle the security plan. Is that correct, Chief?
That's correct.
And that's as far as I really want to go with talking about that. Jim put a very good point out there. You really don't want to be talking about strategy with the chief of police or how he handles it. I think that's to what you were trying to say, James, is you don't want to be discussing deployment of officers and how many in strategy.
Well, I would just like to be assured that if something happens, we know who is under our insurance, we know who's under their insurance, because if something happens, I don't want anybody to say, hey, it's not our person, it's not under our insurance.
We do know that, Jenny.
Huh?
We know whose insurance will cover the persons who the chief...
All right, that was my question.
We know.
I'd just like to understand that, and I don't think it applies to, I'm not asking about numbers of officers, I just want to understand the mechanics. What changed? What has changed from our normal operation? That's all I want to understand.
Yes.
And Chief, correct me if I misunderstood, I'm not so sure that the chief is changing any of his security protocol and how he goes about instituting his security plans, and I think he's expressed a desire to keep the details for security purposes off the public discussion at the moment, but no change from any existing protocol was mentioned. Is that a fair statement?
That's a very fair statement, thank you.
So
Basically-
Mark Briggs will not have any authority over any Foxborough police officers, correct? Okay, thank you.
John?
No, that's
Okay.
very clear.
All right, so now it comes down right back to deductibles, boys. I'm not budging, and I'm going to make it real simple. It's $42.5 per incident, and I'm staying right there. And I'm going to let the boys and the ladies say what they want to say. Excuse me, Ray?
Say 7,500 or 42?
42.5 is the difference between our deductible last year and what we have this year. That's where I'm staying on that. That's my opinion. I'll start with John, and I'll go right down the line, and then we're going to vote on this, and we're going to call
Mark,
it a night.
you're asking for another party to ensure the difference or the amount above $7,500 per incident or per plaintiff.
Correct.
Okay.
It's, you know what, the town gets $25,000 in ticket revenue roughly per game. To go beyond that, in my eyes, it's just, it's ludicrous. You know, and I know it's per incident, it could be 7,500 times 100, or it could be 5,000 times 100. I wouldn't run my own household like that. I'm not going to run the town, so that's just...
No, but you're still willing to accept the original risk, the original exposure of $7,500 per plaintiff uncapped.
I have to be. That's in all fairness. That's what we had last year. I know we're going to have to address this as a board and a town. You know, and try
Absolutely, down the road, we need to restructure
but
this.
Tonight,
Absolutely.
I can't be asking any entity to be paying more than what that we had to pay last year, if I make myself clear by saying that.
So you're asking for a mechanism to fund that component?
Correct.
Okay.
So, John, just to be clear, when you just asked Mark, are you asking for their insurance to kick in? I don't think
No,
we're
I just
asking for
wanna- I
the
just wanna
insurance. If
get it
there's a
as-
$50,000 deductible, the town would be responsible for, historically, what we've been doing is $7,500. The remaining deductible would be paid by a third party, the craft organization, but the insurance would stay the same if things don't work out by the end of the day.
Right, and
Friday.
I just was clarifying Mark's statement.
But it's not their insurance picking it up, it's the indemnification and the insurance that goes with it. With the $50,000, that stays the same. We pay the $7,500. The remaining portion, if this is the direction that you're saying, would be paid by the third party per claim.
That's Mark's proposal, or Mark's.
That's my opinion.
That's his
I'm just
opinion.
saying, because we're gonna vote on something shortly, I imagine, and that I'm not voting for anything that doesn't have that protection in it, is what I'm saying.
The other approach we could take is to say, we're comfortable with picking up the first, pick a number, 25,000 of exposure, and that's it. But I haven't heard that there's a mechanism that's been offered up that can take over the exposure beyond a specified limit. I don't know if that
John,
exists.
the mechanism would be an indemnification agreement, and assume they accepted that number. So the first $25,000 of risk on the deductible we're responsible for. Above that, they are, and the enforcement mechanism is an indemnification agreement.
So if we came up with a number that we could live with, they could go back to their carrier and say...
No, it has nothing to do with insurance. It's the assets of NPS, not
Okay,
insurance assets.
fine, okay.
So what level are you comfortable at? I'm saying 42.5 to the town, so it's $75K per impact incident, just like it has been in the prior year. That's what I want to continue until this insurance situation gets worked out. So anything other than that, they have to agree to reimburse the town for, as far as the deductible goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking you, do you have a number in mind, or is that how you feel? Or
Well, generally, if there's if you're going to assume risk, you have to say that the likelihood of these events happening are, give it a number, 40% of the time something will happen, 10% of the time something will happen. And then you should say, I could take what appears to be a higher number, knowing that the likelihood of that event happening is low. So the town could say, we can handle $50,000. That's it, and go forward, knowing that the likelihood of an event happening is probably somewhere less than 20%.
Okay, so...
And it's basically a balancing of risk.
Yeah. One thing that I'd like John Davis to talk to as you're considering the risk exposure here is to talk about the current policy as he understands it that NPS has, and how that would cover on the Weldon or Dutton case. If you
Well, I'm not going to talk about the Weldon or Dutton case.
But that-
But I can say that in discussions with Mr. Norick today and Jim Cobra before, my understanding is that the civil rights coverage that is provided under the Great Divide policy is encompassed within their, I mentioned before, encompassed within their personal and advertising injury definition, which says that it includes injury caused by a number of things. Personal injury coverage is usually just an enumeration of types of claims, and it includes injury caused by false arrest, detention or imprisonment, or malicious prosecution, all of which are tort claims, but very often can be developed in the context of governmental officials into civil rights claims. So that is the as I was saying before, that's part of what I think would be considered civil rights protection. Again, getting back to the difference between that definition and the Maya definition. I think that definition, and there are some other things, but those are the ones that are principally would be responding in the event of a civil rights claim.
Okay.
Yeah, what I've done is I've said there's another way to go at this. It's just to pick a number, anything above that the assets of the craft organization cover. Given the likelihood of an event happening is fairly low, you could go your route, which is say $7,500 per incident. After that, they pick up the difference. That's fine. Or the other mechanism is we settle in on a number. Any claim above that, they would pick up as well.
Okay.
Rather than having it be an item for an item situation.
Okay. Lorraine, how do you feel?
I mean, I think if our... John, you're saying that our civil rights insurance then is in place under their policy? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying for certain types of civil rights claims,
So not all?
there is protection under the Great Divide policy, provided the claim against us arises, at least in part, from activities or omissions of NPS staff. Okay, so there has to be some participation of both in order to trigger our coverage under the NPS policy. And once it's triggered, we're protected for false arrest, detention, imprisonment, malicious prosecution, and some other things.
So
Our police force is not their staff.
No,
Sorry?
I'm saying, I think to explain it, Lorraine, is if Team Ops calls a police officer, says, all right, we have a fight at parking lot B. They bring the police department to that location. Now they have asked for the police department to come there. Is that what you're saying, John?
I think if a Team Ops employee identifies a subject or a candidate for protective custody, and then they bring that candidate for protective custody to the attention of Foxborough Police, and Foxborough Police act upon that and take that person into protective custody, I think we have a situation where the town is protected under the Great Divide policy.
Okay. Does that clarify that?
For those situations that Team Ops does not initiate that contact,
Then
where do we stand?
Great Divide would say, you're not covered under our policy.
And that's our problem. So I think I don't understand, obviously a lot
Yeah, it's-
I think, I'm trying to think of my
Was
question.
that on the
here.
record?
Of course.
Well, who has authority
So-
on team ops? Who has the authority on team ops?
I don't know.
They're
Who's wants
craft
to answer that
employees.
question?
They're
Mark,
craft-
Mark,
They're it's a craft entity.
yeah, Mark has the ultimate authority, right? And then he has a chain of command under him. Right? I'm asking. You don't know? Come on, Jim.
I didn't, I have to admit, I didn't understand the question, so sorry.
Who
Well,
has
if-
authority over
if-
team ops
Too much-
personnel?
If Ed,
Chief Operating
Yeah.
Officer.
yeah, so Chief O'Leary, who is who's supposed to be responsible for all the, he is not in charge of team ops?
No.
No, Mark Briggs is the Chief Operating Officer of Team Ops, so he would be in charge of all operating aspects of Team Ops.
That's always been the case. Nothing's changed there. So, anything else, Lorraine? I mean,
I guess I'm still trying to understand them. We don't have, unless something changes between now and Friday, we don't have civil rights coverage on our employees who are working up at the stadium, period.
No, it's limited. There is civil rights coverage. It's limited, and that's the nub of the issue that we talked about before. Is that
Okay.
we're trying to get that expanded, which has been the process for the last several days and weeks.
Okay. So, given that, I'm comfortable with the $7,500 deductible.
okay, thank you. Ginny?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going to go through the board, Jim, and I'll go right back.
I'm just trying to help you because
Well, I know, but I just want to hear what the board feels, and then we'll go right back to you.
No, I'm not comfortable with the 50,000 at all, so I would be comfortable with the 7,500.
Okay. 3 out of 4. Jim?
Actually, I do want to hear what Jim has to say.
Okay, you can ask for that, because now it's your turn.
I'll give up my minute.
Thank you, Jim. Your suggestion is the same suggestion as we talked about last Thursday, where you would effectively have us pick up the difference in the deductible. And unfortunately, it doesn't work for us. And what I was hoping we could do is something along the lines of what Lorraine suggested, where we have first loss by one of us, second loss by another. And what I'm hoping to achieve here is to give you some certainty, but also give us some sense of mutual participation. And if you're interested in doing something along those lines, I think we can work something out.
Dick, would it be all right for me to have a private conversation for 1 second? I need to ask you a question. Be right back.
After the meeting, we'll get a copy of whatever motions we have.
Thank you, Frank. The reason for the delay was that town council and the KO Group's council wanted to have a little conference outside, so I'm going to bring it back up to Dick and see where we're at.
Thank you. The suggestion is that instead of torturing the board with trying to come to a conclusion on a cap of the liability tonight, particularly when sitting here, Mr. Corby doesn't know his authority, and we don't know whether, in fact, we're ever going to get there anyways. Another way to solve that problem, because of Bob's understandable reluctance to make this decision for the board, not in mine, what we could do is, if we do get to a situation where everything else is satisfied but for the limit on the deductible for the town, if you would leave that to Bob and I to call each of you, I'm of the opinion that I can talk to each of you individually, get a number, and not share whatever John Gray says with anybody else. And then with that, we'll have the number that the board is happy with. And that's another way to address it. So in other words, you don't come to a conclusion tonight on the exposure that you're willing to accept. If we get to need that information, then I'll call everybody and I'll add it up and divide by 5, I guess is how I'll do it.
Well, already said what I've said multiple times. I don't think it needs to be said again.
So I don't have to call you because I know what
No, you know where I stand.
You're not going to change your mind?
I am not moving one penny on that whole situation. I just make that publicly clear now. And
You don't have to call me either.
Lorraine?
No, thanks.
James?
Yeah, I'd like to talk to him. That's fine.
Okay. John?
It could take a number of different forms. It could be one number, or it could be a $7,500 per incident. So as you evolve this, you can call me, because either scenario may have some merit.
Yeah, but you've got a situation where you already got 3 members here already saying they're not budging from the number, so...
I got it.
So you've already got a situation that it's a 3-2 vote, no matter what happens, on the deductible, I think. Am I clear? So I think...
You're talking about the deductible or cap? Two different things.
Deductible. I'm not budging from the deductible, the monetary value that the town could face.
Mark, just so I understand, you really don't have a cap. You
I have
a limit per claimant.
Yeah, from
But
what
that
was
could be a big
prior.
number, right?
It could be a bigger number. So, I mean, but I
if you
think
don't
it's
mind, I may want to call you because...
going to be cheaper.
Yeah,
Could be.
exactly.
Yeah, a cap might actually work out.
That's what I was getting
One
at.
of the things that you were getting at.
Jeannie, I'm going to call you anyway.
Well,
You hang
that
up
was-
on me or whatever. But
That could be a standing miracle.
Hey, I got caller ID. No, I just don't want I think $50,000
But we
deductible
don't know
right
sitting
now
here what
is-
might be on the table that could be
So-
better or worse. That's all we're saying is let us call, and then you can yell at us and say, not budget.
So we're basically prepared to make a motion to license an event, possibly on Saturday, the one event that our chief of police, Edward O'Leary, has full control of the policing and security at the stadium.
Correct.
As usual, the way it's always been.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah.
Okay, there's one. The other one was no alcohol served.
Yeah, I
I
haven't
mean, are
written
we
that.
reneging on that, or are we still at no alcohol served? Do you have that authority?
Well,
So-
we don't technically have it, but I understand your point.
Well, you're the ones who brought it up. So I would imagine you came here with the authority to say no alcohol in the stadium.
I think Dick is the one who brought it up, to be perfectly fair.
Okay, was he...
I understand your point. That's not going to be a deal breaker, I don't think. So
Okay, so there's two, and the third motion is going to be on what the monetary value of comes forward.
And that
The
comes
liability to the town.
And that comes up if the insurance, which was the first motion you gave till Friday, doesn't come
Correct.
into it.
Is the board satisfied with that? Lorraine? I got 2 nods, yes. I got 2 still heads to my right.
So that's
When
the plan B. I mean, I was concerned that if the first motion fell through, there was no plan B. So what you're saying now is this is plan B.
Yes,
It was going to be a second motion. That's what I always understood, and that's where we're at now.
So assuming we all answer Dick's phone call on Friday,
Yeah.
and there's,
Maybe it'll come from Cindy's phone, so you won't know who it is. And,
That might cost
there
you.
won't,
that got me too.
and there's a number determined,
Right.
then I would suggest as part of this decision that our financial officer be involved, because I think there's an
If I can,
impact there.
Very good
let me read to you what I've drafted, because I think that's in there. It's not specifically in there, but it is in there. That the board hereby votes that the town manager, reliance upon such advice as he deems appropriate, Lorraine, so that would include calling Randy, may determine that an indemnification agreement is in place on or before 5 p.m. July 5th, 2013, as a satisfactory substitute to the insurance condition previously imposed for said soccer event scheduled for July 6, 2013, provided no alcohol to be served in the stadium and the police chief to maintain his standard authority for law enforcement. Those are the 3 conditions.
Standard word, okay? Okay.
It's okay with the chief?
Yeah, he stated that multiple times at this point. And And what are we're missing?
You got
The first sentence is about the deductible in so many words, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the indemnification agreement will go into a place and will address the deductible. Yeah, that's how we're going to
And
do it.
Bobby, obviously, you would concur with our chief financial officer.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I would think so, so we
Just
don't need to
confirm.
add. Go ahead.
But the indemnification agreement will be, the town will assume some risk,
Yeah.
to be determined,
Yeah.
and the assets of the craft organization will assume some risks to be determined.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Well, I have a question. Do we have assurances that the alcohol will not be served at the stadium?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's a condition of this
Of the
approval.
motion.
Okay, I mean, that'll be in writing?
It's already in the motion.
Okay, as long as it's in writing.
Yeah. Jim? Anything to say? Right?
No, what's that?
Want to read the motion, John?
Yeah, I move that the board agree that the town manager, in reliance upon
There's only two people that can read that, my secretary and me.
such advice as he deems appropriate, may determine that an indemnification agreement is in place on or before 5 o'clock p.m., July 5th, 2013, as a satisfactory substitute to the insurance condition previously imposed for said soccer event scheduled for July 6, 2013, provided no alcohol to be served in the stadium, and the police chief to maintain his standard authority for law enforcement.
Motion's made. Do I have a second?
Is there a difference between being served in the stadium and sold in the stadium?
There's no difference. They're not going to have any alcohol open in that stadium.
Okay,
I think that's the word in the statute as well. So.
okay.
We got a motion. We have a second.
Can I get a copy of that?
A second discussion?
Yeah, we got a second by Lorraine with discussion. Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
should we end up in this situation and the number is determined and is acceptable to everybody involved, how does this reference that? I mean, where does that get written?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't have a number in this motion.
No, you don't. So
So-
you're leaving
So
it...
there'll be a different written agreement based on that.
There'll be an indemnification agreement. It's conditioned on indemnification.
Okay, so-
Indemnification agreement will say, for example, if the town is exposed to cost because of the deductible, because of the law enforcement liability, the town will pay the first $3 and the stadium will pay everything above it,
It has to be.
maybe $5.
And Dick, if I may, you need not just to make the phone call, you need to email everybody on the board so that, well, I'm just saying, I'm asking,
Emails.
because I don't want you to say, well, you're not going to tell me what anybody else said. You can
I'm going to
talk.
tell you, I can talk to anybody by individual email or phone.
Exactly,
And I
individual
can email you
email.
the conclusion.
Right. But I'm
Well,
saying, to document it, I think you can't just go by a phone conversation. You have to say, Mark, this is the agreement that we come forward. Is this satisfactory to you on your email to me? And I either say yes or no.
That's a good idea.
That way,
Guys, I don't want to rain on it, but this just sounds like we're having a meeting on the phone on a Friday for the benefit because Mr. Colby doesn't have the authority to make a decision
right.
on a number. We're going into this on piecemeal number that we're going to get at the end of the day, and we're not going to find out till after the fact. I'm not sure this is going in the right direction. And I understand the open meeting law where you can, but you're going to be bouncing around all five of us at different times to try to get up a consensus that nobody else knows.
No, there was not my intention, Jim. My intention was to find out from each of you what your number is, to convey that to the town manager, and you're leaving to the town manager the decision as to what the number is. That's what...
But say that the average of those numbers is not agreeable to the craft organization. And
if it is not,
if you say it's unworkable,
we won't have an indemnification agreement.
right, and say that the insurance coverage doesn't get written by Friday.
Then you've issued a license with conditions. Those conditions remain in effect. They know what they are, and they can proceed as they wish.
Dick, wouldn't it be more expeditious to spend 15 minutes and come up with a number?
I agree.
Say,
I've already
this
said
is
that.
a number that the board voted on. You guys either can make it work or you can't, but
Yeah, it might be, Jim, but we think it's probably better to do it this other way.
Well, I basically stated earlier exactly what Jimmy just said. I think we should come up with a number amongst the board now. And I polled the board, and you've got two at the old deductible staying status quo from a prior insurance policy from last year. And then, Jimmy, you said you would be interested in hearing that phone call. That's why we...
if there was let's step back a little bit. The reason that we're having this discussion is kind of we all got surprised. There was a lawsuit. We all thought we had coverage. We were told we don't have coverage, so we're trying to play catch-up. Maya came up with some numbers in May that kind of took us all by surprise. So it's not like we've been, sitting on this for a year. We're doing the best we can. I think we just got to come up with a number that's fiscally responsible for the town and say this is the best we can do. We had $7,500 with no cap. I think that's horrendous that it's that way, but that's what we've had for the last 10-plus years, whatever. Can we live with that? It's one event. The police chief will police it the way he's done. We're not going to piecemeal it and play Mickey Mouse and trying to have other people do it. It's going to be run the same way. Can we live with the same $7,500? And it's unfortunate that our premiums went up, but to take that hit on a town for one event and the unknown, it sounds unanimously we're not going to do it. So let's just come up with a number that says this is what we're going to do. If you can live with it, fine. If not, then you don't get the license. It's a business. It's not personal. It's what we have to do for the town. My gut feeling is that the events will go on regardless. We'll settle down the road somehow, but the show's going to go on. So let's just come up with a number, put it on the table. You have all day tomorrow, all day Friday to work it out and be done with it.
Okay.
I don't like the serious stuff going back over 2 days.
I agree. That's why I was trying to make it documented so that we all knew at the end result of what it was said instead of being hearsay by a phone conversation. But I tried to go down this path earlier, and then it was stopped, and now we're back to that
If this was
path.
2 weeks ago, I'd say maybe, but if
Yeah.
we haven't figured it out by July 3rd, and we're trying to scramble for the last 2 days,
So-
let's just put it all on the
All right,
table.
so
and do
who
the best.
wants to start with a number? I mean,
Let me throw this out. I'm more in favor of capping any exposure. $7,500, and what I would suggest is that the town would pick up the first $25,000 of exposure. After that, the craft organization would pick up every
Okay,
dollar.
so
after
now
that.
we need to withdraw that motion, because we have the discussion, so you need to withdraw your motion.
Okay. I move that we withdraw the previous motion. We didn't vote on it, so...
No, but you have to withdraw your motion if we're going to prepare to make another one.
Second.
Okay.
All right, so
we
you
put
withdraw
back-
the motion, we're all clean. All right. Now, John has suggested a $25,000 cap of exposure on any deductible charges that the town
I'm gonna
could
get back.
possibly
I'm gonna change
incur.
this.
And that's in any number of occurrences.
Exactly. All right?
No.
All right, so how do you feel about that, Lorraine?
I'd like to ask Randy his opinion on it.
Mr. Scollins, could you please come to the mic?
It certainly sounds like a better risk profile for the town than $7,500 per claimant uncapped. So if that's possible, hooray.
Okay. Thank you, Randy. All right, so we got $25,000 here. Lorraine? Lorraine's amendable to that.
Okay.
Ginny?
Okay.
James?
I think it's wonderful for the town, but in context to what's been going on for year after year, to make this change at the last minute, which is drastically different than what we had last month or a year ago. And honestly, I don't think that's fair to do.
Okay, so what's the number you're thinking of?
I think 70, the same policy terms that we had last time, with the understanding that Maya's beefed up the premium, the deductible, keep what we had last year, and run with it. 7,500, no cap, and it's
7,500, no cap. And that's what we all said just a little while ago. Okay, so do you want to make a motion then?
I'm just going to tell you, you don't have to bother, right? Are you guys-
Well, that's what you said Thursday, but we're going to make it anyways in case your boss changes his mind.
I'm not going to. If there's going to be a give and take, then we can accomplish something. But if you're going to try to unilaterally take your deductible and impose it upon us, it's not going to work. And we've just wasted 2 hours, quite frankly. So I like the idea that John Gray had, that Lorraine had, that this is an opportunity for us together to work through a situation that's being imposed upon us by this insurance company. You taking the old deductible and trying to stick us with the difference between the old deductible and the new deductible is taking your situation or our collective situation and making it solely my situation or our situation. It's not going to work, right? I mean, we've done something really wonderful in many, many respects. It'd be a shame to let it die on this issue here, right? Please don't bother to vote on this because it's not going to be acceptable.
So, Jim, what do you say? Maybe I missed something. What John and Lorraine are saying? You're talking about a cap on the
I don't think
total.
I don't think we'll ever arrive at a situation where we'll agree to take the gap between 7,500 and 50,000. I don't think that that'll ever be in the cards. So I want to discourage you from proceeding down that path. John's idea, I don't necessarily agree with the 25,000, but John's idea, and Lorraine mentioned it before as well, of having some type of initial exposure for the town's account, secondary exposure for our account, that's a more palatable approach from our standpoint. I don't have any authority as far as the actual numbers, but I don't think I need any authority right now. I think what you're talking about doing is establishing a mark on the wall and then sending me back to the stadium and try to get buy-in for that number. If you're going to do that, please give me a chance. That's all I'm saying. Give me a structure and a number that I have the possibility of selling. If you're going to give me something that I can't even support, then it's dead on arrival.
You can, now first of all, I set back a little bit. We're not sticking it to nobody, okay? This is not what the board is trying to do.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
All right? Because that's the words that just came out of your mouth.
I agree.
All right? Now, what I'm trying to say is, we're trying to do this correctly, and it's going back and forth now, back to the deductible that we talked about last Thursday, and we knew this would be the sticking point coming in. We all knew that. You tell me you don't have any marching orders from your entity to tell us what your numbers could be? To have a conversation here, or did you just come in with nothing as far as advice and, hey, here's what we can do? You obviously have had to have a conversation with your people saying, this is what we can come up with.
We haven't, Mark.
Well, then that puts us in a
Why are we
precarious
here?
situation because
we
I
here?
expected that to happen to
Well-
some extent. Hang on. So now I've got people in the audience that want to weigh in on this. I just said to one gentleman that, you know what, I think we're all good here. We're going to move on. In a minute, I'm going to open it up to the public to let them speak on this and get a few inputs from them because I don't think it's fair it's not to. A minute ago, I said, no, I think we're good. So what do we want to do here?
Can I?
One sec. Go ahead. He's conceding. Go ahead.
Okay, so we've been able to see that there's been some understanding reached with the chief about that everyone seems joyful about here. Seems to be somehow related to risk, because I think that's the only thing that would make the craft organization joyful at this point. Let me just say, it seems like there's some...
I don't think he's aware of it yet.
Okay. All right. So, given that situation, I think there's less risk than you perceive. Where do we go? I mean, how do you convey that to the craft organization? You've just had a discussion.
All I'm trying to suggest is we really have, I think, achieved quite a bit, and we're very close. I would ask you not to get stuck on the $7,500 deductible, but to try to come up with something that is a principled proposal to us that has a chance. And I'm being very forthright when I say that if you vote now and you say the number is $7,500, take it or leave it, I won't be able to get it done. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. I won't be able to get it done. If you come back with a different proposal and it makes sense and it has a principled basis to it, I'll try my best.
Jack, would you like to speak to the board?
Yes, I would, Mac.
Thank you. Thank you for being patient, too. I appreciate it.
Well, and I, for the record, Jack Arthurlet, I realize this has been a very, very trying experience for everybody. But my concern is that we are right now in a position where everybody's going to come up a loser here. I've been around town long enough to have seen the start of all of this with E.M. Lowe on the racetrack, then the offer for stadium, the conflicts between stadium and Patriots and stadium owners, and, I mean, it was terrible. And finally, with concentrated effort by many, many people over the years, we finally get something workable when Bob Kraft brought all the squabbling entities under one ownership for the first time. And we get something positive going up there. And Foxborough is today, in very, very large part, where it is now because it has had a partnership relationship, and I use that word intentionally, a partnership relationship with the key elements of its economy, whether it's a manufacturing plant, a large commercial enterprise, whatever it was. We had that with the Straw Hat era. We had that with the Foxborough Company. We had that at one time, more so than now, with the Kraft organization. And Ventus then picked up as best it could where Foxborough left off. Right now, we're in a situation where you people have been through a living hell. This is no way to govern, but it's no way to have to try and run a business either. And if I were a big entertainment venue, I would think twice about applying for concert time at the stadium if these are the things that are going on in the background. We've got an event Saturday. And I can't imagine how happy those soccer fans are going to be when they walk in and for the first time they can't buy a beer. Or they're going to sit down and they're going to be lovely. All the people that would have worked Saturday are not going to have a job because this shouldn't be taking place in the 11th hour. We should never, ever, ever be in this position. But I hear so much about civil rights liability. I haven't heard a word about civil rights violations. Our police officers are charged with civil rights violations. Now, have we, as a community, done anything?
Jack, they're not charged with anything.
There have been suits filed against the police department.
There's a big difference between charged.
Well, the point is suits have been filed. Legal action is in place. They predict possibly 2,700 people in a class action suit. Have we done anything about that? Are we working with standards for police officers? A lot of these guys come in from out of town. Have we had workshops? Have we had counseling sessions with them? We've got a lot at stake here. But right now, if we are not careful and if we don't get back to a working relationship with the entity that brings millions of dollars into this town, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose everything. What happened to the working relationship that we had? Where do we go wrong that we end up at the 11th hour in situations like this and everybody pouring heart and soul into trying to come up with a solution? I think that this does not bode well for the town. It does not bode well for the sense of welcome of business community, and it certainly does not bode well for people that are trying to run a multi-million-dollar operation when permits and delays come and everything becomes a hassle. We're fighting over this, we're fighting over that. There is a better way, and we've had it in the past. I think we can have it again, but we've got to get out of this 11th hour catastrophe mode and get back to working as a total entity of a community, that we can work with the Kraft organization and come up with something that is going to make this blossom again. And it just pains me so much to see this going on in the community. I mean, I've seen a lot of battles with selectmen drawn into conflicts between entities in town. But boy, this has got to be one of the worst, and the ramifications are very, very serious. I think Foxborough has a lot at stake here, and we have a vested interest in everybody doing whatever we can to get things back on track, get these issues settled, and get back to supporting one another.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mark,
Anybody else wish to speak? Come up to the mic. Yeah, I'm going to give 5 more minutes to this, and we're going to move on.
Hi, Martha Slattery, 2 Joseph Road here in Foxborough. I just have a question. I know Bob mentioned about a bylaw and the Foxborough Police having to have a presence up there. I know we can change bylaws. I think we should consider that, in that who pays them and whose they would still come under the police chief's jurisdiction, but if they were employed by the stadium staff per se, then they would be covered under their liability. I think it's a very common sense, easy approach to it, and I think it's something we should consider. Take a look at the bylaw, see how and if it can be changed, and see if, in fact, if there's 12 police officers that are relegated to go up there or whatever under his jurisdiction, why can't they come under their payment schedule so that they're on their payroll? They're still overseen by our chief. And that would take all of the liability off the town because they'd be under their liability. And I think somebody ought to think about it, and I think we ought to take a good look at the bylaw and think about changing it. Because times change, people change, circumstances change. Nobody thought we'd be in this position, but we're in it. So I think a little bit of a common sense type of approach to this might be helpful for everybody. And if it's possible for them to assume the police officers, who hires the other police officers from Norton, Milford, whatever? Who's paying them?
Okay.
Do they come under us? Or do
They come under us.
Under us, okay. So I think we just need to take a look at it. Take a look at the bylaw and take a look at who actually could pay them, and if they're, quote, their employees, I mean, who pays the state police? So I think you ought to take a look at it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
All right, anybody else? Randy?
Just 2 brief points. First one's a question. It's my understanding there are orders of conditions in the awarding of these licenses. I always was under the impression that it was a requirement of the entity to which the license was awarded that they were responsible for civil rights coverage. So I'm asking, has that changed? It seems like if it has, then I think we're definitely heading in the wrong direction here. We'll be going backwards in terms of protection for the town. So my question is, what are the order of conditions for these events? Is civil rights coverage a part of that? Has it been? I've seen documents that it has been.
It is.
Yeah, so I guess I don't understand the posturing here. If that's always been, or traditionally been, an order of conditions for these events, I don't understand why the craft organization is backing away from a coverage, from a condition that they have traditionally been responsible for. That's point one. Point two is, I heard Mr. Cobrey talk about if the gap in the coverage could be closed, the difference in the civil rights protection between what Maya requires and what the Great Divide has, that would be covered again, which sounds like it's in conflict with the statement that if our police force is not under the control of the craft organization, they can't, or that entity, that they can't cover the liability. So those 2 points seem to be in conflict. I don't understand that, and hopefully somebody could reconcile the two.
Dick, you want to address that?
No, I think John probably is better addressing that than I am. But
Well, I guess, Randy, I didn't quite understand the question. If they're working for the crafts as opposed to the town?
Yeah, my understanding is that there's been talk about moving the part or some or all of the Foxborough public safety contingent under the control of stadium management, so that their insurance, their civil rights insurance, would apply.
Randy, we're not doing that.
Okay, but I just
I think it was suggested earlier, though. We're not doing that now, but it was suggested.
So then I'd stand on the first point about the order of conditions and why is there a change now.
Thank you. Okay, Linda? And that's going to be it for open mic, okay?
So, Linda Walsh, 8 Pond Ave. I feel bad for everybody at the table. I really do. But at the end of the day, it comes down to this man right here, who I have the utmost respect and trust in, and as well as his men. So at the end of the day, if you don't have the trust in these folks, why would we ask a businessman to take that risk if we're not willing to take the risk? So somewhere there has to be a 50-50. And I think that you're getting really close. Granted, there's been some sidebars, but I think you folks are getting close, and I think that the chief willing to work with you guys, the crafts willing to work, Bobby, who's stepping into a new position, has done a fantastic job. I just want to see a little bit more, give and take, because right now it's like, okay, by the way, you're not going to sell any liquor. And by the way, you're going to, it just seems like, what are we giving? What are we giving that's different than we always have given? That's what I don't see. Where's the give and take?
Okay.
All right?
Thank you. Lorraine, you've been waiting patiently.
I just wanted to ask, could I have a discussion with you and Dick and Bob and Chief and John? Just add one more to the group that you just had out there, because I just want to ask a question.
Oh, man.
Can we do that?
It's fine with me, sure.
Well, before we do that, we're stuck on the deductible thing. I understand where you want to go. I see 4 board members saying the $7,500. Do I still see that? Or are you at all flexible on this? Because we can talk about this till we're blue in the face. If nobody's flexing, then...
Mark,
Can I
interject one suggestion to you? It's been my experience that the morning is a better time to resolve problems. There have been, I'd say every night this week, Mr. Corbry and I have hung up on one another in a pretty angry mood, and before 8 o'clock the next morning, we're talking again with better ideas, okay? My counsel to you on the issue of, and Jim, I understand your concern about sequential meetings, is that on the issue of what the cap on the deductible is, give us a chance to see if we can come to an agreement on it. If we do, I'll poll the board. Bobby will make the ultimate decision after we know what each of the board members thinks. We have been able to make a lot of progress. Jim's asked you for the chance to try and do that. I'm asking you for the chance to try and do that.
And Jim has already made a statement, our Jim, saying that that's not the way he wants to do it.
Well,
And
I'm just cautioning, because yes, I understand everyone thinks clearer in the morning, but we've got one day to do it. If this doesn't work and it's at the end of the day on Friday and we don't have a backup with something concrete from the board, then it's all for naught. If you're comfortable going back and forth and you have a relationship and you think you can figure this out, I don't want to stand in the way. But at the end of the day on Friday, the only thing we have on the table right now is guys work out an insurance plan by the end of the day Friday. If that doesn't work, we've got no plan B. That's all I'm saying. I'm looking out for the interest of having an event on Saturday.
I think that's the preferable way to go.
Okay.
Ginny?
What's the process of changing to a $25,000 deductible per occurrence in what we have now? I mean, what process do we have to go through to do that?
Well, that's...
Can I just try to answer the question I heard?
Yeah, it's all about deductible right now. We're just trying to figure out what number for a deductible would be. You know what? We're going to beat it up again. I can see it.
The question that I wanted to.
You may go ask the question you want with town council. You may. And that's the only one that else can do it because we can't have 3. So while you're doing that, we're going to continue the discussion on the deductible. It's where you want to be flexible on it or not. I mean, it seems like...
Well, where does it get written in? I mean, where...
It'd be in the motion. It'd be in the motion.
No, but Ginny, this will be an agreement between us and the craft organization.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with the
Insurance
insurance.
Is the insurance, I mean, it's not involved
It's not
in the
flexible
insurance.
right now. That's the problem.
So we're dealing directly now with you, who at this point cannot make a decision because you have to go someplace else to get a decision.
And the thing is, I would have thought, being to the importance of the level of this meeting, that you would have brought something.
If I can help you, Mark, honestly and truly, I've been up until 3:30, 3:25. I was on the phone with Dick all day. Bob was on the phone a few times, focusing on the insurance. John was on the phone too, on the insurance issue. I didn't have any time, is what it came down to. I understand your point. All I'm telling you is flat out devoted to this insurance issue. And that's it. There's no...
Dan, you can't make a phone call? You can't take a 5-minute recess and see where this is going so we can end this? Yes, no, maybe?
Everybody's got a cell phone.
But,
Mr. Colby, when your applications for events came before the town of Foxborough, and we knew this insurance issue was looming, the Board of Selectmen worked with you by agreeing to that motion attached to the application. So I think we have been accommodating, and we not only, we did all the events that way.
I probably disagree with you a little bit on this. To be fair, we didn't know about the change in the deductible. We, the craft group, did not know about the change in the deductible until June 24th. And so that is the amount of time that we've really had to work on that issue. And that's the truth.
Well, the insurance issue, we knew that the insurance was going to be expiring on June 30th. We knew that. You knew that, and we knew it.
And last week when I was here...
What we did was we voted on a motion to give you up until June 30th.
Okay.
And you know what we should have done? We should have said, you know what? Let's not vote on these applications until this insurance has been figured out. And in hindsight, that's the way I would have voted, because then we would have had enough time, because we approved the first one like around March. You would have had enough time to investigate this. You would have found out what was going on, and this would have been cleared up, and we wouldn't be all here at 20 minutes of 8.
And you know what?
The day before 4th of July.
Okay,
I'm supposed to be lectured about this when I told you last week that we tried to work with your town manager. You asked me not to throw him under the bus.
Don't start on that.
That's the truth.
Stop, both of yous. Enough. We're off track. We're not going down that road. All right. What is the board? Lorraine, do you have anything to say? Because we're going to wrap this up.
I'd just like to suggest that we do that motion that gives us till the end of Friday, work out the insurance thing, and I'm making novenas that the insurance thing works out. That's
the only motion that we already made. That's all you want to do. You don't want to make a second motion. You don't want to agree to the second motion.
Council or Bob or somebody thinks that we should do the second
I'm
motion.
sorry, Lorraine, you're suggesting that we go back to the motion John made?
We have the first motion in place, which gives us till 5 o'clock on Friday
But
to
I've also
resolve.
withdrawn that motion, so I'm going to...
No, you've withdrawn the second motion. This is
That was
B.
the one.
That one's 5-0. This one is B. I got this.
Can you read B
All right?
again?
And you can read B again. Oh, the first motion carried 5-0.
Yeah, so that's fine.
All right?
So
The
we'll
second
read B
motion
again.
is whether or not we're going to let Dick do phone calls to discuss whether or not we're going to, have a discussion with every individual board member about what we think about his future discussions. John made a motion, withdrew the motion, capping it at the liability to the town at $25,000, which I'm amendable to, because it's better than what I was thinking.
Well, it's a better risk profile.
But the thing is, you got to remember, people, that's what the town could possibly make on this situation, on this event. So why would you ever go further than that? I mean, I just can't do it. I'm sorry. I answer to 17,000 people in this town. I can't go beyond that number. So John made a lot of sense with that motion. We're going to hear a motion now, whether you want it or not, or reject it later, that's fine. I think that's where John wants to go. I want to go. Do you want to go down that road?
I need to hear the motion again.
Okay. And Jimmy, you know what the motion. Do you want to go down that road? Do you want to make a second motion?
When I said don't cap it and keep the policy that we had last year, I thought that was more advantageous to the craft organization.
Absolutely was.
And I'm hearing that that's more offensive to you. So I'm utterly confused right now.
By
putting a $25,000 cap on it, that's 3 people suing.
Right.
If you guys all of a sudden think that's a better thing,
I don't know what planet I'm on, but that's fine.
Yeah, right. Me either.
Can we hear the original
Yeah.
motion without the cap?
Well, actually, I didn't make that as a motion. I made it as a suggestion. But I can make it as a motion.
Can we hear
No,
that
you made the
second motion?
No.
And then we had discussion. You made that motion, then you withdrew the motion.
Wants to hear the one that was withdrawn.
Right.
You want to hear motion A or B?
B.
B. B, please.
Okay, that's this one that was
Yes.
withdrawn.
Yes.
I'll read it again.
Thank you.
That the board hereby votes that the town manager, in reliance upon such advice as he deems appropriate, may determine that an indemnification agreement is in place on or before 5:00 p.m., July 5th, 2013, as a satisfactory substitute to the insurance condition previously imposed for said soccer event scheduled for July 6, 2013, provided no alcohol to be served in the stadium, and the police chief to maintain the standard authority for law enforcement, his standard authority for law enforcement.
Okay, so hearing that, that leaves it open for us to get the phone call and say, I'm going for the cap at 25, or I'm going for the 7,500, or whatever it is, so that we can have that discussion. I feel like that gives us the most flexibility to work this out, basically.
But in all fairness, if nobody's flexible now at this table, how would you think they're going to be any more flexible come Friday on the phone?
At that point,
$225,000 and two $7,500 per. This is going in circles.
I know, but I think at that point, though, the craft organization will know what they're faced with. It's like
sometimes you have to give them some motivation to tell them what they're faced with. Any entity in business, if I was to go to, I'm not going down that road. All right.
I mean,
can I ask a question first,
Sure.
Jim? And I'm not trying to put you guys in a corner at all. I'm just trying to get a sense from this board so that if I'm asked to make this decision on Friday, I know where they're at. And I don't want to bat this thing back and forth for 4 hours on Friday and then end up in the same spot. So if they decide to go to some deductible limit, like a $25,000 total or $50,000 total, you're going to come back with, we'll do the next 50, but then you have to do the third 50. Is that your idea? Is this what you're thinking about?
Thank you. I have not given this a great deal of thought, but what I would like to see happen is a three-tiered approach. I would like to see that there be the first loss would be for the town of Foxborough. The second loss, so once you get above, in John's case, $25,000, that amount up to another number would be for the craft group. And then if it goes above that number, then we would have some type of a sharing. And the reason I say that is, right now, I think that this problem is a problem that's being imposed upon all of us at this table by virtue of the change in the deductible policy. And I think that it would be best if we set up a structure where we have an incentive to continue to work together. And so having this three-tier approach where one party takes the first loss, the other party takes the second loss, and then in a really bad circumstance we share in that situation. That would be how I would handle this in almost every other circumstance. So if you're asking me for a proposal, that's the proposal I would make. And I have no authority.
I just wanted to make that clear to the board so they know what the perspective was and they have time to think about it. I think I know where they're going already. If that's where they're going, then we should do that now.
Well, if I might say, this is absolutely no way to negotiate an agreement. Okay?
Well, you know what,
Mark,
Dick,
there's no way-
sometimes negotiations need to end, unfortunately.
Well,
and this
they do,
I
but-
want to be very careful of any open meeting law violations. That's what I'm trying to tread upon here lightly. You get people marching out of the room, side conversation, everything. I know that's all perfectly well and done. But it's time for it to end. The board needs to pony up and make a decision. It's very easy to be off the camera, off the table, and on a phone, and being distracted by whatever distraction. Okay, that's fine to me. The pressure's here. It's time to make a decision. It's time to make a motion. And if you have to send that back, you can have your event. We've worked diligently, just like the rest of the entities in this room in the town, to try and come to a reasonable conclusion. Now it's time to come to one where we're going to say, hey, this is the leadership of the town. We're going to go offer you this. If you like it, fine. If not, proceed in any direction you want, and then we'll deal with it later. But that's why we're here. So it's time to move on. That's the end of the discussion. I'm calling for a vote of the board. John, do you want to make a motion?
Okay, I move that, how would I phrase this? To structure an indemnification agreement, I would move that the town be exposed to and absorb the potential for no more than $25,000 for this event, and that the assets of the craft organization would assume and be exposed to any amount above that.
Motion made. Is there a second? Second. Discussion? All those in favor? Oh, Jim,
Under discussion, I think we're putting the town in a position where it's so restrictive, much less, more onerous on the craft organization. The restrictions are such that wherever this thing goes, they're going to say, how in their right mind would we take on anything over $25,000 before, when we never had that at the 11th hour? That's my concern. Are we putting ourselves in a bad position?
But it's a different risk profile, and it's based on their assessment of the risk, which they have said they believe to be fairly low. So it's a structure that protects the town on the upside. And in the unlikely event that there's, I don't know, what's 25,000 divided by
it's 3 point
something.
Three people under the old policy and a half a person under the new policy.
Right.
So basically, in fairness, the town is not taking any liability. So be it. But I don't know how that's palatable for the other side of the table.
But we already...
But it's, from my perspective, it's palatable to, it's something the town can handle if there's an event.
And it's just for one. It's just for one event. Somebody has to assume risk here. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't take the risk. I mean...
I know we can't take the risk, Mark. I'm just asking that we let this go through and see what we can accomplish through the insurance piece of it, and give us till Friday, because then we have to make that decision by 5 o'clock on Friday. We each know where we stand at this table right now.
There's a strong possibility, Lorraine. Certain people's cell phones might not work in the certain geological location that they're located at, and I'm not being funny about it.
Then maybe, we need to make an appointed time that we have, that there's a call.
But there won't be one call. There'll be multiple calls. It's going to go back and forth, just like it's doing at this table. It's foreseeable. It's very foreseeable. We could have been over this last Thursday. And the whole discussion was brought up last Thursday, and I don't believe for a minute it wasn't discussed at that entity about the deductible. It was a sticking point for me. The chairman of the board of Fox was saying, this is his sticking point. You're telling me nobody discussed that up on the Hill? I can't buy it. And I'm said serious. My cell phone might not work in my area. So it's very much doesn't happen. And I think it's just time the board makes an executive decision here and moves on. Now, if Jimmy wants to go back to the old deductible and it's not palatable, whatever, I don't know. But we need to make a decision here tonight. I think negotiations have come to a conclusion. I think everybody's put their hard work into it, and we need to make a decision. Does anybody not want to make a decision tonight?
I'd like to wait till Friday, too.
Ginny, do you want to wait till Friday?
Well, I think trying to work out the insurance for Friday.
That's already said and done.
Right.
That's in stone.
Okay. But I think we also need a plan B, and whether it's 25,000 cap or the 7,500. I think it's the plan B that we have to.
And that's what the motion is on right now. And
so, I'm in favor of figuring out plan B.
Well, the motion is made. Is that acceptable to you? The motion that has been made and seconded. John made the motion. I seconded it. Are you accepting that? Are you willing to accept that? Do you want to modify?
That's the $25,000 cap per
for this
event, not per person.
No, this
per event. Yeah, I could go on with that.
James?
We've had the discussion. The motion was made and seconded, so it's, are you asking for my vote or for more discussion?
Or do you want to try and steer the board towards back the other way, which they said they couldn't it wasn't palatable anyways? All right. All those in favor of the, you caught me just in time, Jim.
I'm sorry, Mark. I want to make sure I understand what exactly is being proposed here, but I take it there's a motion that says if we don't get the insurance taken care of and we're into Plan B, that you will be modifying our events license so that there is a condition that says we need to enter into another indemnification agreement with the town by which we have to indemnify you for any losses associated with Saturday's Revolution game. Is it above $25,000? Is that what the motion is? Okay. I just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
But hold on. It isn't that. What you're talking about is an indemnification for the increased cost of the deductible. It's not a general indemnification.
So you're clarifying.
I'm clarifying it, yeah.
It's the same indemnification, the same insurance,
Right.
but once it reaches 25,000, which is the first half a person, then you're asking the Patriots organization to take on everything after that. Because we're not changing the
event, for that one. So the second time it happens, if there were two incidents,
Two incidents in one event.
then it would be 25 and 25 again? Is that?
No.
No.
They would cover the first 3.3 people. I mean, we would cover the first 3.3. 75, 75, 75 is 225.
But up
and then
there
you get
it's
another
50.
2,500, huh?
Up there it's 50.
No, but the 7,500 and the 50,000 make nothing to do with this. It's just, this is a separate agreement between us and the craft organization. If we want to go, and if they can live with it, that we'll assume the first $25,000 of liability for how many events or how many plaintiffs there might be from an event.
For the cost of a deductible.
Deductible.
For the cost of the deductible.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you could phrase it to...
That's what you're talking
just
about.
have to flow through insurance.
And that's it. That's in lieu of their being able to satisfy the insurance requirement, right?
Right.
Yeah. What about the alcohol provision?
You said no alcohol in the stadium is part of the motion.
So you're going with that motion, but you want to insert a number.
Yeah.
Can let me do that for you?
Well, she can read it back to you if you'd like.
All I had is structure the indemnification agreement so that the town is exposed and absorbs $25,000, and the assets of the craft organization absorb any amount above that.
Yeah, it's not the craft organization, but...
Oh.
You know, can I just say, I know what you're saying, and I know what the board says.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're right. If it's not the craft organization, it would be the applicant.
Yeah.
So... John, you have anything to add?
No, I'm just looking out to see if there's any fireworks starting yet.
No. If we stick around another hour, there will be, though.
Pretty soon.
Who's having fireworks tonight?
Stadium's having fireworks, and Walpole.
That tonight?
And Sharon.
Yes, I'll be here.
Brockton. Falmouth is tomorrow.
These guys were considering it to close off the access to my front yard, so that was good. I couldn't get home anyway.
Oh, really?
But nothing else to do.
Jim, the man of many words of wisdom.
That's what you want.
Talking about my James.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me. No.
What are you suggesting here? You very experienced. I respect a lot of things, all the things you say, actually. But what are you suggesting that we
Thanks
do?
for that vote of confidence, Mark, but I think we're making something up as we go and putting a number on something that has no... If you get... I'm amazed that you guys are nodding your head that this is the way to go.
I'm not even you, so...
You know, if I was the applicant and I didn't get my permit and these were the restrictions, I would think it was, any judge would look at that and say, how would you expect this applicant, they're so onerous, they're unattainable, and we'd be back to a weakened position from the town. That's my, I go back to our original policy. Whoever came up with that, it's been going on for years. Nobody knew we didn't have the coverage, but to go back at the 11th hour and basically say we're not going to have any coverage. Now, 25,000 is a tiny, minuscule, and then tell them to take that entire burden on a Wednesday before they, granted, and I know there was a history leading up to this. I just don't think it's the right way to go.
So what do you suggest?
Mark, same policy that we had before. And, things have changed, and we can go back to the Wellner-Duttner issues or how this all came. But the fact is, we thought we had coverage. We didn't. We find out in May that our deductibles go up. It's a cost of business. We have, and you said it, you got 19,000 people. There's a fiduciary responsibility. If we had it before, we can live with it, keep the same numbers that we had before, and then it's a business decision. If they want to move forward and take on that liability, they don't want to do it, but they're saying the town should do it. We can't do that either. For the numbers just don't work out. So we're at a stalemate. So keep everything the same as it was. Hopefully that works out by the end of the day. If not, to make things up as we go along at the 11th hour, I don't think it serves anybody.
I would think I'm going to go with Jimmy on this. So I think Lorraine's in the same right mind. So do you want me to call your vote, or you want to withdraw your motion?
I can withdraw the motion, and somebody else can make a new motion.
James, you want to make a motion?
The motion is if the first the initial motion number A1 doesn't work out, then the license will be permitted based on the Maya policy that was given to us of a $50,000 deductible, with the first $7,500 paid by the town. If the applicant wants to take the responsibility for the remaining deductible, that's the decision that we have to have in writing before the end of the day Friday. And it's unfortunate that it's come to this, but I don't see any other way on a Wednesday with a Saturday event. And I'm very troubled by the fact that we don't have the coverage that this document says we should have because of the civil rights. And we're backtracking, I don't know how many years, and it's come to this at the 11th hour. So in all fairness, we probably all have a little bit of responsibility to get to here. And I, going back to the comments, yes, I have the faith in our police chief of police, and if everything goes well, fine. It's not that we don't have lack of confidence or we think there's going to be a problem, but to put the town in that position, I don't see how we can do it.
I agree.
It's a business decision.
So can you read that motion back for us, Diane?
Was that? Yeah, sorry.
I lost at the beginning. If motion number 1 doesn't work, I think needs to be rephrased a bit.
Let me formally.
It's really part of that motion. You just substitute where it said 25,000 will not exceed $7,500 per claim.
And that the applicant will take.
That's all we have to say. Town exposure won't exceed $7,500 per claim.
And this goes back to the Meyer offer that we have a. Okay.
So you just where I said for
Right.
will not exceed 25,000.
But it has to be $7,500 per claim. Yeah.
All right, Jimmy, we're going to clean up your motion. Can you withdraw that motion, please? James, withdraw this motion.
All right.
Here's the final motion of the night, right here.
Okay, let's try this again.
And I'm just to clarify, I'm not interested in the no alcohol stuff because I think we're asking for problems. If you're not serving alcohol inside, they're going to be drinking in the parking lot.
I'm
How do
actually
you
of the
enforce
mind
it?
of Jimmy.
I kind of agree with James and myself on that. So, standard quo, it's just basically all this debate is coming down to exactly what we talked about last Thursday.
Okay, I move that the board hereby votes that the town manager, in reliance upon such advice as he deems appropriate, may determine that an indemnification agreement is in place on or before 5:00 p.m. July 5th, 2013, as a satisfactory substitute to the insurance condition previously imposed for said soccer event scheduled for July 6, 2003, and that the police chief to maintain his standard authority for law enforcement and the town's exposure for deductibles under its policy with Maya shall not exceed $7,500 per occurrence.
Per claim.
Per claim.
For that event only.
Right, it says per soccer event.
Motion is made. Second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? 4 in favor, all those opposed, 1 opposed. Okay, thank you very much. Good night, everybody. Happy 4th of July.